All right, councillors, good afternoon everyone. Good afternoon all our officers and staff and observers, and certainly to our live stream audience today for our General Council meeting. All right, councillors, if those that have ever, that might be a microphone on there, Scott. If the height of the agenda, if you've never bothered to print it out, exceeds 6 inches, you can tell that it's going to be a fairly lengthy agenda today, and we have got some important items to get through. And obviously, I think there's quite a few very significant things that we want to achieve today, which I think are very important for us and certainly for our communities. Look, before we start, I think it's appropriate that since we last met, we were informed of the very sad news of the passing of Charlie's dad, and I think it certainly hasn't been an opportunity that I've wanted to take in this place, but Charlie's dad, Stephen James Gribble, came and served on this council in the early 90s for a term here. For those of you who didn't know Steve, I didn't know him that well, but certainly he was a man of great conviction in our community. And obviously as a colleague, certainly went to got the great opportunity to serve his community. I know that was a great honour for him. He served certainly the agricultural community in the state of Queensland very, very well for many, many years. Until his passing, he had a very, very strong interest in politics and certainly his community. Certainly his colleagues, certainly in the irrigation scheme in the area here. And importantly, mostly his family, and we're very blessed that obviously we get to see one of his sons that sits with us. This community is very grateful, and I think the Brindle Cone name lives on in lots of things that we do and see around the region. So I think it's appropriate before we start today, I think that we all might just stand in their place and observe the next slide on this meeting. Thank you, everyone. All right, councillors, I think we're all pretty much present here. We have an apology from Councillor Bell for today. Would someone like to move the apology? Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Second, Councillor Daniels. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Any leave of absence is required? Yes.
Leave of absence for the 26th of next meeting, March.
26th of March. Councillor Daniels.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to request a leave of absence for the 16th of April.
16th of April. And, well, Councillor Nixon, yep.
26th.
26th of March as well. Any others?
Last call.
Last call, yeah, exactly. All right, councillors, so seeking leaves of absence in ascending order, I assume here, the 26th of March, Councillor Brimblecombe and Councillor Nixon, and then for a leave of absence of Councillor Daniels for the 16th of April. Someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded Councillor McIndoe. For those three councillors on those 2 days. All in favour? Against? Thank you. All right, I think we had an opening prayer today. I think the churches together usually nominate a pro rata person. I think Chris is not attending today, so Joel, would you like to lead us in the prayer? No, Joel, I don't expect you to do that. I know you have many talents, but that certainly won't be one of them. But look, I think certainly we've had the opportunity, I guess, to reflect today, I think, on Steve's life. I think that's probably enough, a great example for us all. So let's go forward with that. Councillors, as you would have noticed and read diligently in your agendas today, in item 13.2 today, we get to obviously reflect on our reconciliation action plan. And it's probably been remiss of us as an organisation for a long time that we haven't formally identified and acknowledged a welcome to country at this place over a number of years. And can I say, in keeping with what is the right thing to do and in an appropriate way, that we do recognise the traditional and first inhabitants of this country. Obviously, we get to pay our respects today. So going forward from today, and without a preamble to obviously the report that will come to us later on about more detail around the things we're going to put into an active plan going forward in the community. We take this opportunity in the very first instance here. I know that certainly Councillor Daniels has always made a point of making sure that in her communities committee she acknowledges the traditional elders and the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. So on behalf of us all and behalf of our communities today, particularly I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. And we all pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And obviously, you know, most of you, many of you have been so active in I guess, the lives and the opportunities for all our Indigenous communities here. There are some emerging, I guess you'd say, groups of people in our region, and all of them we acknowledge today in this welcome. It was very pleasing this week, or sorry, last week, that had a welcome to country at the Central Queensland University graduation ceremony, which was the first one that was held here. Charmaine McKeon's daughter, Melise, actually did the welcome there, and there can be no greater example of certainly elders who have been practicing in their communities and then seeing their future leaders emerging from those same campuses. And that was a great opportunity, and it certainly was not missed today. And certainly, councillors encourage, certainly your diligence and I guess reflection when we actually deal with that item later on at item 13.2. The councillors, back to our agenda. So we're looking today at obviously the confirmation of the minutes of our previous meeting, which was from the General Council meeting the 19th of February. Councillors, if someone who's present like to do those. Councillor Godwin Smith and Councillor McIndoe. All right, can we just cast our eyes over those, please? Sorry, I've changed up there pretty quickly. I think they run through page 18 of that agenda that you have there. Anything in there? All pretty right. Well, it's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Sorry, Councillor Sypher.
No, what business arising from that?
We'll get to that. That'll be next.
Sorry.
Yes, no, thank you, Councillor Sypher. All in favour?
Okay, sorry.
Against? Thank you. All right. Business arising out of those minutes, Councillor Sypher. Yeah.
Just in general business, I requested, here it is, I requested a map of the designated stock routes through Central Highlands,
yes.
and I have not received it.
Through Mr. Mayor, we're still trying to get those in an appropriate format for all the councillors.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sypher. Thanks, Daniel. Any others? Other queries, business arising with me? Okay, your review of those outstanding meeting actions, councillors, on the big sheets. I have noticed, councillors, that has been significantly slimmed down, so we must be working through those. Any questions out of those? All good? Well, councillor, there's no questions. We'll move on to our upcoming agenda items. And that is still reasonably substantive. There's still a lot of requests there that we need to get into. Anything in there that we, sorry, councillor Roll.
Number 6, Mayor, on that. I've got the wrong one. No, it's all right.
All good? The number 6 I was looking at was the whole organisation. That's not it.
No, that's all right.
All right.
Doesn't have on this.
Anything else, councillors? And obviously, the invitation extends to do anything that needs to come on with that. Well, obviously, we can add to that. And we have influence in some of our standing committees. All right, councillors, we'll move on. Material personal interest, conflicts of interest, personal gifts and benefits. Favourite part of the show. Yes, councillor McIntyre.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not sure what item agenda number it will come in under. There was an item in the communities meeting earlier this morning that's been held over to council today. I'm unsure of the item number that'll come in at.
It will just be a late report, councillor McIntyre. We'll refer to it as a late report and yeah.
So I'd like to declare perceived conflict of interest in that item. It is up for voting, and I declare that I have a conflict of interest in this matter, defined as by section 175D of the Local Government Act 2009, as follows: that I myself have an interest in the matter due to the fact that I am partaking, or I am executive member of the captains that are getting paid at that establishment on that night, and I will be dealing with this declared conflict of interest by leaving the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted on.
Thank you, councillor McIntyre. So that negates the need for a discussion about the extra stages. So thanks, councillor McIntyre. And that late agenda item comes via the communities, comes via the community standing committee. There's none of that. The standing orders there and that mechanism we have there, that if there is a matter there that requires discussion later on, that it can be referred to our general meeting. So that's how it comes here to the late report. Thank Councillor Daniels for referring that to us. All right, thank you, Councillor McIntyre. No other MPIs to declare anyone? All good, thank you. Oh. Right, no petition for
No, sorry.
No. All right, councillors, let's move to our committee recommendations, and our first report is on page 19, as I referred to at the start. I guess it comes via our community section and a reflection on our reconciliation action plan. This is quite an important, a good milestone for our organisation, and certainly I commend our officers for the work they've done in anticipation of I guess you'd say, the start, not the finish, but certainly this wonderful work is in progress. Gentlemen, and Daniel Fletcher, if you could lead us in, please, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you, councillors, you're obviously well aware of the progress behind the Reconciliation Action Plan, or the reflect component of it anyway, and I certainly won't take any of the funding away from Suzanne and Linda, who or their team anyway have done the lion's share of this work, and it's certainly been a long time getting us to this place, so I'll hand it straight over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. Through the chair, the Connected Communities team has been very busy, as you're aware, putting the final touches on the Reconciliation Action Plan. And as you can see from the attachment before you today, it's been to the designer since you last saw it. So you can see we've got the beautiful graphics and art within the Reconciliation Action Plan now. You're not able to hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Is that better?
Yeah, that's not
wonderful. Thank you for letting me know, Councillor. Okay, so as we are all aware, Council is very committed to reconciliation, and we've always been active in this space. It's not something new to us, but obviously we're wanting to formalise our plans for the future and move forward more strategically. So the RAP clarifies what actions we plan to take on our reconciliation journey. So this report before you today presents the final draft of the Reconciliation Action Plan for your consideration to endorse today. So I'll just pass you over to Linda, the Supervisor of Community Development, to provide some more information and detail on the Reconciliation Action Plan.
Thanks, Suzanne. Through the chair, I'm very pleased to be presenting the draft Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan, the RAP, to Council today. I'd I'd like to acknowledge and thank the elders and community members that have given their time and patience to teach us, share their knowledge and experiences, no matter how painful it may have been sometimes to look back, to walk with us and guide us on this reconciliation journey. We also appreciate the other organisations that have shared their journey along the way. This document has been developed in accordance with Reconciliation Australia's framework and guidelines. The RAP will provide strategic direction across all areas of the organisation. Focuses on long-term sustainable actions that will give a mutual benefit to the Central Highlands community and council. The RAP sets out our commitment to reconciliation into 4 priority areas: relationships, respect, opportunities and settlement progress. Action items, deliverables, timelines and those responsible are listed under each of the priority areas in the RAP. It's really important for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that the Council is accepting and welcoming of their cultures, traditions and values. With your endorsement, this strategy will demonstrate Central Highlands Regional Council's public commitment to reconciliation. Progress on the actions will be reported to Council biannually. I'll now hand over to councillors to give consideration to endorsing this strategy today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Linda. And I think those words are very prophetic in that sometimes it is very difficult to pick a point in time to change or to come up with a plan, and certainly around reconciliation. And as you rightly say, it can be quite hurtful for a lot of people, and all of us in a way that needs to, I guess, identify something that has been inherently missing. And something that probably in some way, shape or form is about the goodwill going forward, more so than reflecting on what's happened in the past. And whilst it's very easy sometimes to ask that be a very arbitrary point in time, the reality is any day that we start this is soon enough. And as long as those ideals and the good, as I say, the good community spirit that this community has had, not just for 200 years, but for tens of thousands of years, is reflected in what we do going forward today. So, look, I really do want to commend the staff that have been, I guess, involved in putting this together, not just for articulating a policy that the council can go forward with and the organisation can go forward with, but something that our community can identify with. And I thank you all very much for that. Councillors' questions. Councillor Syke.
No, I just really want to say I was very impressed by the document. I am a great supporter and work on the CQU document as well. So I fully support this and congratulations. I was just going to ask, is Patrice still with us? Yeah.
So Patrice Carrell, who was our Indigenous officer, she was on a contract, and that contract ended February 15th. So at the moment, we're recruiting to that position. So when we looked at that position and looked at the requirements of that role operationally, now that the RAP is more or less, we could say, wrapped up, as in the RAP is ready to go, we're now looking at the implementation of the RAP. So that position has moved from a 5-day-a-week position to a 3-day-a-week position, and Patrice was not attracted to that time fraction. So therefore, we've gone to recruit for that position. Yeah. So in answer to your question, in short, no, she's not. She's no longer working in council. But we certainly do appreciate her contribution, and that she did a lot of work on the RAP, and we certainly did make sure that prior to her leaving council that we thanked her for all her work, and we do appreciate her contribution.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Syke. Any other comments, questions?
And I mean, Patrice has presented to council before, and certainly the documents come a long way, and what we see today is something I think we can be really proud of, and I think it's a great framework for us to move forward and be really proud of. So congratulations to Patrice as well, and all the team that were involved in putting this together. It's really wonderful.
I'm happy to move that we accept this.
And I think it is good to acknowledge Councillor Daniels providing, certainly, as Chair of the Communities Committee, her comments certainly preamble to that. So thank you, Councillor Daniels, for that. All right, it's been moved by Councillor Daniels, seconded by Councillor Syke. Very, very important document. Thank you very much, Linda Connell, again. Thank you, Suzanne, for supervising through this. It's been moved and seconded. Councillors, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Unanimously passed.
Congratulations to council.
Thank you very much. So can I just ask Linda where Flash's the Shire map is?
Oh, in Suzanne's office.
In Suzanne's office.
Only until we find the position.
So we're working out a suitable place so that it can be showcased and anyone visiting the council offices can see work.
Yeah, oh, I just thought on the day we might put it out somewhere where people might recognise it.
Certainly we'll go into that.
And
You see, it's got the extra job on it.
And
Let's see that.
with his permission, that's just electronically. Not on the painting. Oh, we can take someone else's painting, he comes over. That's what we do at the moment.
All right, councillors, item 13.3, which is, comes under their development application, part of the agenda here. This is in relation to a reconfiguration of lot of Wills Road Airport. We have Kirsten, we have Joseph, and we have Ryan. And we have the gentleman, Daniel Fletcher, might lead us through it. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Councillors, the first of two, we're confirming a lot applications today. This one runs to 2 lots. You'll note, councillor, that the officers were the communication was to approve this with a number of conditions by not straight over the line. I think you're going to go through it.
Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon. Mr Mayor, through you, I present the following application for council decision. Developed application RAL 014.1 2018 for reconfiguring a lot 1 into 2 lots at 400 Wills Road was lodged with council for assessment on the 22nd of October last year and considered properly made on the 25th of October following payment of the applicable fee. The relevant proposal is located within the rural zone and proposes a subdivision resulting in lots less than the minimum prescribed lot size for reconfiguring a lot under the current Central Highlands Regional Council zoning scheme. As such, it triggered impact assessment in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The public notification of the development was undertaken from the 18th of January up until the 12th of February 2019, during which time 5 properly made submissions in support of development was received. None in objection were received. The subject site of the development proposal is located approximately 7.8 kilometres northwest of Emerald CBD and west of the Gregory Highway. The site is a vernacular allotment that is divided in 2 by the existing Sunwater irrigation channel in a north-south alignment. The site adjoins the Central Western Railway line to the east and Wills Road to the south. Existing features include a rural dwelling house and a number of ancillary structures with existing access off Wills Road. A large dam occupies the northern corner of the site and there is no easements encumbering the site. And according to the applicant, the existing Sunwater channel water wheel is in working order. Surrounding land uses consist predominantly of land used for cropping purposes. The applicant proposes to subdivide the existing 301 hectare allotment into 2 allotments separated by the existing Sunwater channel. Table 1 of the report provides an overview of the proposed areas and frontages of both allotments and shows proposed lot 1 as 229 hectares and proposed lot 2 to be 72 hectares in area. Being impact accessible, the proposed reconfiguring lot is accessible against the state planning policy, the Central Queensland Regional Plan and the Central Highlands Planning Scheme to the extent relevant. Planning Scheme strategic framework sets the policy direction for the planning scheme and informs the basis for ensuring appropriate development occurs within the planning scheme area for the life of the scheme. This included seven themes that collectively represent the policy intent for the scheme. The proposed development, having access and availability to reliable water source, is able to maintain a viable farm size that will support the ability of future landowners to continue rural pursuits and therefore complies with the strategic framework specific outcomes 3.5.3.1C of the agricultural and soil resources, as well as specific outcomes 3.8.6.1F. Furthermore, the continued productive capacity of the Goa Mackenzie water supply scheme will be maintained and not fragmented as a result of the proposed reconfiguring lot, and therefore complies with the strategic framework specific outcomes 3.5.3.1E for agricultural and soil resources. As such, proposed development complies with the applicable planning scheme strategic framework assessment benchmarks to their extent relevant. With regards to the overlays, the subject site is mapped within an agricultural and regional infrastructure overlays. The Agricultural Overlay Code Acceptable Outcome, AO3, requires that the proposed development layout will result in reconfiguring the result of of a minimum of 2,000 hectares for each created allotment. At 229 and 72 hectares respectively, the proposed development does not comply with the acceptable outcome and must therefore demonstrate compliance with the performance-based solution of performance outcome PO3, which requires that reconfiguring the lot on Class A and B land does not result in sizes that lead to A, fragmentation of rural land and the loss of land to sustain viable rural production, the potential for conflict between existing and potential farming and proposed lots intended for residential or rural residential use, or number C, the loss of farming flexibility. So on 15 October last year, council officers requested further information from the applicant, specifically surrounding these details, and in particular, officers were concerned that one, the proposed development would result in a potential loss of viable rural production land and farming flexibility on both allotments, without guaranteeing perpetuity to support food and agricultural commodity production independent of one another. Number two, would not result in economically and agricultural viable farm size to support ongoing agricultural pursuits. And number three, would not have sufficient access to sufficient quantities of water allocation available for both allotments to remain agriculturally viable for the growing of horticultural crops. In response, the applicant provided the attached agronomist report from a suitably qualified and experienced consultant as part of the information response. The agronomist report concluded that whilst historically there have been 7 fields in operation used for the production of cotton and grain, the proposed subdivision would result in 6 of the existing lots to remain within proposed lot 1, and 1 would be included in proposed lot 2. According to the economist, a fully irrigated cotton grain crop typically requires 8 to 10 megalitres per hectare crop, while most tree, vine, and other horticultural crops require 3 to 5 megalitres per hectare per annum. Historically, both proposed allotments would have operated independently with access to irrigated water, and following the subdivision, both allotments will still be able to access the irrigation channel network independently using the existing water wheel to ensure sufficient water supply for future cropping purposes. Typically, the lot sizes within Emerald irrigation area vary from between 10 hectares to over 200 hectares, with many of these allotments separated by a sunwater channel. Water is a tradable commodity, and cotton farming businesses typically require a larger crop area than most other irrigated agricultural uses. Cotton farming operations therefore tend to straddle multiple allotments, which when combined can easily exceed 100 hectares within the irrigation catchment area. By contrast, horticultural farms tend to be smaller in size, with allotment sizes ranging between 50 and 100 hectares, therefore requiring less area to remain economically and agriculturally viable to support ongoing agricultural pursuits, provided there is sufficient irrigation is available. Therefore, even though the proposed allotment size does not comply with the minimum 2,000 hectare provision of the Planning Scheme of Agricultural Overlay Code, the applicant has sufficiently demonstrated compliance with the purpose of the Overlay Code through compliance with the performance outcome, and there in turn the purpose of that code. Other planning matters for Council's consideration have also been included within the body of the report, and demonstrates how the proposed development complies with the planning scheme. In conclusion, planning case law dictates that each application is assessed on its own merit. The applicant proposes to formalise the existing rural land use arrangement currently divided by the sunwater drainage. The accompanying agronomist report provides supporting evidence that future rural pursuits for cropping purposes on each allotment will be able to continue operating independently, given the availability of reliable water supply source. This water source is a tradable commodity and can be used to service each allotment independently, as it historically has already done so, regardless of the minimum lot size of the plants. As such, it considers that sufficient merit exists to warrant an approval of the development in this instance, and therefore it is requested the Council approve the development application RAL 014.1 2018 for reconfiguring lot 1 and 2 at 400 Wills Road, Emerald, in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but as always, I'm happy to receive any questions.
No, thanks, Rob. Before we do, just in terms of adding some more information to that, perhaps it might be worthwhile, Kirsten, if we could talk about the TLPI that relates to usage, not so much to the actual reconfiguration of lot. Just, I think there's been, whilst there has been 5 supporting applications, there's certainly been a community interest around obviously any activity or reconfiguration of lot at the Emerald Irrigation Area. And I guess questions from, probably their peak bodies around what does the TLPI actually do with respect to protecting, I guess, the irrigation.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in relation to the TLPI is for renewables within the irrigation area. So it's for applications that would have sailed through council as a code accessible application, where they're located in the irrigated area. They do trigger a higher level of assessment, which is impact assessment. So that TLPI specifically only relates to applications for renewable energy facilities within irrigated areas. So that TLPI wouldn't apply to this development.
No, that's what I'm saying. It applies to a renewable, the use rather than the actual configuration.
Yes, the irrigated area.
Councillors, questions?
As usual, sorry. I wish to just go to page 48 of 266, summary of the submissions received. Item 1, for example, the proposed submission will create another rural lot on a fringe of town, which is suitable size and has access to water infrastructure to service a viable agricultural activity. Our officers have commented, or the officers comment, the submitter's comment is supported and has been considered as part of the assessment of the proposed development against the planning scheme agricultural overlay code. Now, last year we had an application of similarity to the east, and it certainly wasn't supported by the officers' comments when the water infrastructure was there and the proposed, it's the same stuff. So we're developing okay out on this side, but yet we've got the same size, well, not same size land, but we've got the same irrigation. It's in the identical irrigation scheme, except this one's to the north, the other one is to the east, and we have a completely different suggestion or outcome. The submitters are all in favour, and the submitters weren't in favour to the east. And it raises a question in my head is, if I've got to make this as a councillor, sure, the submitters might be one thing, but I've got to look at it from a very clear understanding of, do we just, because we don't have anyone against this, do we treat it differently? Why are we treating it differently when the water infrastructure to the east was there? The land size, everyone's agreeing with the land size. We didn't agree with the land size out there. The water allocation was slightly different, but certainly was sufficient to develop, as one says here, on the edge of town, proximity to the Emerald Township. The size of the proposed lots gives people looking to get into the agricultural industry the opportunity to purchase land in proximity to the town of Emerald. Our officers comment, the planning scheme does not regulate market interest in the purchase of land, blah, 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 blah. So we're in favour again, yet we weren't to the east. So I am very confused as to why what is the difference, and I'd like to understand clearly what the difference is, please.
Mr Mayor, through you.
And I think Councillor Ackler referred to the CT commodities application. Yeah.
Mr Mayor, through you, whilst I'm not specifically privy on the details of that application, I guess what it comes down to at the end of the day is, it really very much, when it comes to this kind of thing, it is on a case-by-case basis. The defining factors at the end of the day, the recommendation does rest with the assessment manager of the time, but the scheme clearly does allow, by virtue of the hierarchy, it establishes a strategic framework, then the overlays, then the zone codes, then the development codes. And as you move up those ranks, if you don't comply with the lower level side of things, then provided you can, as for example, in this instance, they clearly demonstrated that they are able to operate, given the availability of irrigated water, that they are able to operate or potentially operate a viable agricultural pursuit, that it does comply with the scheme. And I'd love to be able to consider the other application, but case law, like I said in the summary, dictates that it's got to be on a case-by-case basis, and I can only assess it as the assessment manager in this particular application. I understand that there are similarities, but clearly when this one was assessed, it ticked boxes. Maybe the manager can shed a little bit more light on the other application. But,
That's fine. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can extend on that. So the applications were two very different applications, even though they were both on the configuration of a lot. There were dissimilarities in terms of the water allocation and the information that was provided on those applications. There were differences in the agronomist's report and the agronomist's report that council saw for that. And then there were also differences in the proposed lot sizes as per the development application last year and the development application this year. As the report does suggest, one of the submitters did say that the proposal gives people the opportunity to get into farming. As it says, agricultural industry, but we don't regulate marketing industry, so while we can note that submission, it's certainly not something that's considered as part of the application process and the assessment process. We do have to consider all submissions as they're received, but whether or not we're in support or opposing certain submissions that are received, we still have to consider them and note them if they have no bearing on the planning scheme or the assessment in that respect. So, that's this one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So we do have to assess the applications on merit based on the information provided as per the development application process. When we do that tiered assessment against the acceptable outcomes, performance outcomes, the overall outcomes, and then the strategic framework, which an impact application would have to be assessed against.
Any other questions, councillors? And there is, I always say this, that's not necessary, but I mean, you have created precedents in the past similar to this that already exist in the scheme area. I think there's actually one of the references to, in one of the submitters refers to previous, where the country is more or less practically broken by some water infrastructure and adjacent to other things. All right. Well, councillors, if there's no other questions, the recommendation is there on page, on page 37, which it says there that this is obviously there for approval, subject to obviously significant amounts of conditions. Is someone who move that? Moved by Councillor Godfrey-Smith, seconded by Councillor Roth. Been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 2 for next approval for in May. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Ryan. Right, councillors, the next development application is item 13.4, which is on page 72. Which is relates to a 1 and 4 lot reconfiguration of Wellington Cove Morrow Road. So, Kirsten's been subbed off, has been brought on the field. All right, thank you, Mr. General Manager. You might introduce the team again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Happy to introduce Mr. Houlihan on behalf of the community. Chime in for this one as well, but another reconfiguring of lot 1 into 4 this time around. So, maybe team 5, I'll keep going on.
And then, Mr. Mayor, through you, I present the following change application for council resolution. Development application RAL 0.008.1 2018 for reconfiguring lot 1 into 4 Cove Morrow Road was lodged with council for assessment on 13 August 2018. was approved under delegated authority on the 16th of November 2018, subject to reasonable and relevant conditions. The application was subject to code assessment against the planning scheme assessment benchmarks in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act 2016. Since then, the applicant and the assessment manager has agreed to a number of extensions to the applicant's appeal period in order to allow sufficient time for the applicant to prepare representations and the assessment manager to properly consider them. Further detail on the background of the approval can be found under section 3 of the report. Development approval RAL 008.1 2018 encompasses the subdivision of the existing 2.034 hectare land parcel into 4 individual allotments, all exceeding the minimum 4,000 square metre prescribed by the planning scheme. Each of the proposed allotments are to be accessed by a new road constructed by the applicant along the southern property boundary that will give lawful access to the proposed allotment from the proposed allotments to Coonawarra Road as the nearest council constructed road. The applicant intends for the new road to become council's asset, whereby council will ultimately be responsible for its maintenance in perpetuity. On 29th of January 2019, the applicant lodged change representations to the assessment manager regarding condition 2 of the approval. Condition 2 of the approval requires the applicant to construct a new road consisting of a new 18-metre wide road reserve to service the development in accordance with Council's planning scheme policy for development works and the Capricorn Municipal Design Guidelines, hereafter referred to as CMDG. It also requires the applicant to construct a new road intersection and provide turnaround area that will become part of the new road for refuge vehicle manoeuvring and turnaround. The applicant's change representation seeks an alternative solution to Council's minimum prescribed road reserve width, requesting that a 12.5 metre wide width road reserve be applied to the approval in lieu of the minimum prescribed 18 metre wide road reserve required under their planning scheme policy for development works in the CMDG. The applicant also proposes a 10 by 15 metre access easement at the end of the proposed new road to facilitate turnaround for refuge vehicles. Figure 2 of the report illustrates the approved plan of development, while Figure 4 shows the proposed plan of development lodged as part of the applicant's representations. In accordance with Section 76 of the Planning Act, the assessment manager, when deciding a change representation, must assess the change representation against and having regard to the matters that must be considered when assessing the development application to the extent that those matters are relevant. Basically, in other words, the assessment manager must consider the applicant's request for amending condition 2 by having regard to the relevant planning scheme provisions and their extent relevant to that condition. If the assessment manager agrees with any representations, he or she must issue a negotiated decision notice that replaces the original decision notice, stating that the assessment manager agrees with the representations and only one of those may be given. The planning scheme policy for development works specifies the standards and provides guidance for the design and construction of council roads. It requires the design and construction of municipal roads to be undertaken in accordance with the standards and specifications provided in the CMDG guidelines. The planning scheme transport parking and access code assessment benchmarks for road and transport network requires the development involving the creation of new roads ensures that the new road maintains a safe and existing functioning of the existing road transport networks and integrates functionally and compatible with the existing planned road network. In response, the planning scheme policy for development works requires the construction of a new access place to be in accordance with the requirements of the CMDG. And the deemed to comply requirements for an access place requires a minimum of 18 metre wide road reserve, as shown in Figure 5 of the report. It's noted that an access place is the lowest order road under the CMDG. Condition 2 of Council's decision notice dated 21st of November 2018 reflected the above-mentioned CMDG requirements. Nevertheless, in this instance, it is considered that given that the proposed development will service a total of 4 newly created lots as part of the proposed development, and adopting a 12.5 metre wide road reserve width will not impact the ability of the road to function as intended. And with regards to the proposed 10 by 5, 15 metre access and services easement, the scope of the application material lodged with Council for assessment didn't include or encompass reconfiguring a lot for application for an access easement, and so it cannot be considered a suitable outcome for achieving compliance with the relevant assessment benchmark. It is therefore recommended that the requirement of condition 2 regarding the construction of a refuge vehicle turnaround area as part of the new road construction remains as issued. It is also recommended that the turnaround area remains where originally positioned, being along the southwest corner of proposed lot 4. And in conclusion, whilst adopting a less than 12.5 metre wide road reserve width will not be consistent with Council's planning scheme policy for development works, it is considered that it is reasonably able to satisfy the planning scheme transport parking and access code performance outcome in this instance for road and transport networks. And as such, following consideration of the applicant's request and subject to the justifications outlined within the report, I respectfully request that Council resolve to support the applicant's representations in part, subject to amending the conditions of the development approval as outlined within the officer's recommendation. All other conditions are to remain as per the original decision notice. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As always.
So if I might sum up, I guess you'd say, really is, had this gentleman constructed the reconfiguration lot when he was originally approved, it would have been constructed on the 12.5 metre formation. Obviously, the Capricorn Municipal guidelines subsequently in the other plan, when he has reapplied, say 18, and you've allowed him to get a 12.5. See?
Spot on, Mr. Mayor.
And if I can jump in there, Mr. Mayor, the road has been built, so the road was built back in 2010. The curb and channel, everything's in place, except for the final seal. So it's all been constructed. If we kept the current conditions, we would be asking them to rip it up and redo it to a slightly wider standard.
Question of the 12.5 for council to maintain that, any easier or harder, 18 or 12.5?
I guess given the existing or the proposed layout back in the original approval, the road was typically the road's in the centre of the corridor. The previous approval had the road right over against the boundary, so we have one side which has enough room for the services and the maintenance, and the other side of the road is basically right up against the property boundary. Look, I believe the original intent was that if the block beside them ever subdivided as well, that would become the second half and we get the full road reserve. So I believe that was the intention from doing some research into the original application. So from a service point of view, services can fit on that one side of the corridor, and from a maintenance point of view, as long as we have the ability to turn around at the end for vehicles and service trucks such as the rubbish truck, it would suit our needs.
Good Chair, would you mind just clarifying for me why this is, I guess, a new road that is public asset as opposed to having a private easement for this type of subdivision?
Mr. Mayor, through you. Excellent question, Councillor Daniels. In the background of the report in section 3, it talks a little bit about what was originally proposed and what had happened. And in there, the idea that it would be was that it would be an access easement, where essentially you have one burdened lot and benefiting other lots. The problem that they ran into, aside from obviously the previous application lapsing and then partial reconstruction some of the infrastructure there, was that Ergon would not support the provision to each individual lot of an access easement. They required a road. And so, having already constructed the 12.5 metre wide road reserve width, they essentially did ask through the application material, said, look, this is what we're proposing. Would you guys consider this? We said, we did the assessment against the schemes, clearly saying 18 metre wide road reserve width. They are proposing a new road. They are not proposing an access easement. As a new road, as I alluded in the report as well in my presentation, that becomes a council asset to be maintained and be responsible for perpetuity. Now, obviously, there's a benchmark that's been set, but that benchmark, there was a different benchmark back when it was partially constructed at that time. And so, in effect, they're asking for some concession on our part to apply a different set of benchmark, which council, my understanding by resolution is the relevant jurisdiction to be able to grant such a request. And so the access easement wouldn't suit from the perspective that Ergon wouldn't provide power to each one of the lots, which leaves them only a road or a new road to construct. That's the justification of the need for it. During the meeting we had on site.
Through the mayor, just a couple of questions about water. How much of this land gets flooded?
That's an answer to you.
I don't think any.
Part of it, part of it does. So in particular,
Not going for, but that's going for.
So it's actually on the oil.
the eastern part, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm just reading a slight extract out of my report. That was for the assessment originally done. So we're talking about the decision that we granted. We're looking at a change to that existing decision in addition to. But this is just an extract out of the report. Whilst the eastern part of the subject site is subject to the impacts of flooding, it's considered that the proposed reconfiguring lot will not result in an unreasonable risk to people and property. According to the applicant, whilst parts of the proposed lot 4 flooded during the 2010 flood, the existing shed and concrete structures were not inundated by flooding. Furthermore, each of the remaining land parcels features sufficient flood-free area to facilitate future dwelling construction. Notwithstanding this, any future material increases in build form within flood-affected areas of Lot 4 will be subject to accessible development in accordance with the planning scheme table assessment for overlays. As such, it's considered that the proposed development is generally compatible with the perceived nature of the flood risk. Now, in the
Right. It's got a note there about the 2000 on the map.
Just a blue line, yeah, blue line is 174.
Or 96.
Yeah, that is, so obviously just that part, that 2/3 of lot 4, with the 177 might go on. So that doesn't impact obviously any condition, I guess you'd say, in terms of the building parcels or?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, the part of the report that I just read out, if those structures which are currently on site were ever to be demolished and removed, and if there was a house being constructed on that, in place of it, then depending on the location of that, if it was within that demarcation line area for flood permit, it would go through the accessible development stage. In other words, we would receive it, we would assess it on its own merit, we would look at what you have on the floor heights, identity, etc., etc.
Just through the mayor, but the reason I asked that question was that when we were looking at levy banks, there was to be a levy built along Codemora Road. So I'm just wondering, like, you know, are they taking any precautions for flooding? The other water question I've got, most of those people out there come out of the river. Have they got enough access, or have they got enough water to provide for development of those 4 blocks?
Mr. Mayor, another excellent question. Thank you, Councillor. There is some water infrastructure located along Codemora Road, and as part of the operational works approval and some of the works they've constructed, they have, according to the applicant, they have placed some water infrastructure within the road reserve area to service each one of those allotments. Now, the condition of the approval, specifically, because we are slightly risk averse as well, we have to make sure that we treat this as an entirely new application, as if nothing was ever constructed, in effect. And so the condition number, specifically condition number condition number 6, which I'll show you. So condition number 6 does require the applicant to lodge an operational works application for water infrastructure. It's a necessary infrastructure condition, and then? Okay.
Which line should we get that showing, I believe?
Which one's that? Which one is it?
Just trying to switch onto track.
Sorry.
My apologies. Fantastic, thank you so much. So obviously we want the operational works need to make provision in condition number 3. They need to obtain operational works permit for water infrastructure because it's going to become our asset at the end of the day. We need to make sure it's constructed in accordance with our standards. So we've set out the standards for water infrastructure that needs to be constructed. And we also, condition number 6, we require them to obtain an operational works permit for the construction of a new water main supply main within the new road reserve. And then once they've obtained that as part of their approval, they need to go ahead and construct it in accordance with our standards essentially. However, in this instance, what they've asked for in their condition and their change application is one condition, and that's condition 2, specifically related to the width of the road reserve. And they haven't asked us anything related to water infrastructure. And so that condition still stands as a pollution issue.
So the water recirculation service doesn't go to them, it's from the river?
So this particular drawing is part of the attachment that I added to the report. Essentially, it's in the response. This shows the original layout for the operations works application to lodge. You can see some of the water main that they've allocated here, travelling up within the Kogamara Road Reserve and into the site to provide water services to each one of those lots. So if we go by what they've submitted, I guess the implication is that there is potentially water provided there, at least by the drawings that they provided. I'm not so trusting normally, and so I would rather put a condition on them making sure that whatever they have provided is going to be in accordance with standard conditions.
So there is a condition that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, condition number 6.
Okay. Any other questions? Sorry, did someone else have a question here?
Well, the question was a statement, any building, so would go in there, would have to go 600 mil above flood level, wouldn't it?
Just a through you. If there is a dwelling house constructed, so if those existing buildings, this only pertains to the final lot number 4. The other ones are outside of it. But if they were to take those existing buildings there and they were to construct it, the habitable floor level need to be a certain height above what the flood heights would be, the reported flood heights. And in that instance, as part of the assessment process, we would go through and we would look at what does the height need to be, and we would put conditions to that effect on developers, making sure that they have to comply with that.
There's some more work happening at present with KBR, is it, with floodlights?
I'm pretty sure, Mr. Mayor, through you, that, and I'm not too privy about the details on that, but there is something in the pipeline, I think. I'm not quite sure what the process on that is, or where that's at this stage. That's probably something that the manager will be able to provide clarification.
Councillor, any more questions? Now, expected in the resolution that it might be just some of the words, have you actually changed those?
Yeah, just double check it.
Needs to be.
Can someone just read that please, Ron?
Well, yes, to me.
So you had you had crossed out after showing, which was in the second line, showing a 12.5 metre wide new road reserve.
We've just added the words in there, you're showing a 12.5 metre wide new road reserve in there to have that requirement there, and then only have the remaining strike through for the balance. we just need to make sure that that's correct, technically correct. Because if we take out what's in the agenda, there won't be any reference to it at all.
Mr. Mayor, through you, so the condition number 1 for approved plans and documents states that unless varied by other conditions of this approval, the development must be carried out generally in accordance with the following approved plan. And where any inconsistencies between the approved plan and other conditions of the approval are identified, the other conditions of approval take precedence must be complied with. So that particular drawing there is, let me find that for a second, is that particular drawing there. And you'll note that it states 12.5 metre wide road reservoirs for the new road. So I'm happy for council, obviously, it's up to council how they would like to word that condition. That being said, this would probably be a better outcome in terms of providing more certainty and clarity as to what our expectation would be. And so certainly that new format would be supported, showing a 12.5 metre new road reserve. Dedication to council road reserve. That would be consistent with the proposed plan.
Okay, so councillor, that's the proposal, obviously to formally recognise that plan, given the construction is around that 12.5 metre road reserve, that's correct.
Yeah, if I may through the mayor. So what that does then is implicate or is restrict us to a 6 metre road in the operational works. So when the operational works is lodged, it will restrict us to the previous condition of a 6 metre wide road, which is in effect what is already being constructed.
Which you're happy with?
In this case, I think.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't ask you that. Is what's been requested and what's been proposed?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the way it read originally, I just don't. I see, even though you struck the words there, I don't know how it doesn't read very well in its previous
Reference to plan.
Certainly,
It doesn't.
certainly reads much better like that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as long as the abbreviation or this changes that we've made aren't going to compromise something from an original condition, that's all.
That condition is.
All right.
We're constructing the road, or are they constructing the road? So how long before, what conditions will be met prior to them handing it over or us taking control of it?
Yeah. So once the development application has been approved, they then have to submit an operational works permit. The operational works application will then specify what type of works they're going to carry out. So that's for your water, for your road, construction of road. We then condition that to the standard that it may be. They then have to build that road or construct the water main, have it all connected and operational prior to the sealing of the subdivision and prior to it being an actual permit for sale. So they hand it over to us, and then there's obviously a defect liability period as well, which is associated with that. Once they've handed it over to us, usually a 12 months, where they're still responsible for that maintenance.
So there's an operation period of time before we take over care and maintenance.
Correct.
So Joe,
Is that a sealed road?
yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, Councillor.
I think there was a development in the last several years at the end of Opal Street that we did something similar. Would that of PJ Kelly's, where there's a road constructed down there? Is that similar? Did we take on the ownership of that road as well?
Sort of, yeah. Yes. No. We take it once, without going through a long discussion. Once a roadway is dedicated as part of the development, after the 12 months, we take it to care and maintenance. We see operationally how it works. all the maintenance up until that period, any potential road failures, curb failures. It has to pass the engineering test, obviously, before we sign the plan or seal the plan. So you operate your drainage, water reticulation, road construction, so all of that has to pass. So each of the road, as you're constructing the road, each of your tests on the compaction have all got to be passed by council engineers. So functionally then when the road is sealed and completed, there's still another 12 months period of time to let it run, but it's actually the developer's responsibility for any repairs or breakages, I guess you'd say. And then after that period of time, if it's in good condition, then we sign off on the road. Is that roughly how it works?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, these infrastructure charges you need to pay as well.
Yes, yes. All right. Any other questions? I hope Tony and Kathy are watching this afternoon, so. Councillors, I'm happy, there's the recommendation, obviously this amendment is obviously around making sure that obviously the plans reflect the change. Someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Grimble-Kane. Councillor Daniels just wants to see the reform. Seconded by Councillor Daniels. So it's been moved and seconded. All right. All in favour? Against? It'll be 7-1 today, isn't it? 7-2. What are we doing now? They can't be. 6-2. 6-2, thanks, Marty. There's no way to calculate. Oh, there is a calculator. Right, councillors, thank you very much, planners. Thank you, Jason, for answering those questions. That's a 20-minute run for you. You can be subbed off. Councillors, the next agenda item is 13.5, page 97. So Ryan's saying he wants to speak there. Right, Councillor, this is the development application update. Now, Ryan, can I respectfully suggest, and I know you like reading these out and using an example, I think we'll take them as read, but certainly I'd like to hear your example if you're going to use it again today. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, do you want me to skip straight to the example?
Yes, please. Yep.
And skip the rest?
Yep. Well, I guess all I'm saying, Ryan, is I know you diligently read these, and we've had access to them, we've had a good read of them. But if you go to the example, I think that's always a good process to work through.
I'm happy with that, Mr. Mayor. So, back by popular demand, our focus application for this month was a previous development approval, MCU 031.1 2018, for a material change of use for the expansion of the existing nature-based tourism use at O'Brien's Road, Rewan. It was lodged with Council for assessment on the 13th of September 2018 and approved under delegated authority on the 12th of December 2018. Locally, the development is known as Sandstone Park. Sandstone Park is located approximately 77 kilometres south of Ralston and within the rural zone under the planning scheme. Carnarvon Gorge Environmental Management and Conservation Zone is located directly south and west from the subject site. The applicant proposed for the expansion of the existing nature-based tourism use with 5 additional cabins, 5 additional glamping eco tents, and a manager's residence, with the following image illustrating the approved plan of development, including the location of the cabins here, and the manager's residence down here, and the glamping eco tents. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to proceed with the question.
Okay. Well, I think that this was raised, I think, by Councillor Godwin-Smith at some point around just conditions around us. These are reasonably remote, quite unique application. So, Councillor Godwin-Smith, did you have a question?
Oh, it's just in relation to water, as I said, and I think from memory, I looked it up at the time, and there's not really a lot in there. No, I just guess how confident are you when you approve something like this that you know that those conditions can be met?
Mr. Mayor, through you, it's an excellent question, Council. The planning scheme, it depends on, I guess, what the water infrastructure is going to be used for. There's two aspects to it. There's the bushfire management side of things, and there's the potable water supply source. The scheme allows as the assessment manager to work within a certain framework. In terms of the bushfire side of things, it allows you to, at least by virtue of an accepted outcome, it says where you're located within a non-sewer area and you're within a bushfire hazard overlay area. It says where there's no reticulated water supply, the premises has the following minimum water supply capacity dedicated for firefighting purposes. And it says 10,000 litres for residential activities. Where by contrast, when it comes to the provision of potable water, it relies more on it places the onus on the applicant to essentially supply quantities and sufficient water capacities to meet an anticipated demand. Also keep in mind that in many cases water can be trucked in situations where there is a shortage. And so what it says in the actual code is it says where development is located in a non-urban zone and reticulated water supply is not available, development is provided with appropriate on-site rainwater collection to service the need of the use. So it doesn't prescribe a litre capacity, as they're saying. And it kind of makes sense because you never know how many people will be staying there. The classification of the building in itself, and unfortunately I'm not certified, but there are certain requirements depending on the building classification as to what water supply you need to provide. But certainly by virtue of the planning scheme, all it says under the performance-based outcome says development must be provided with infrastructure services and utilities appropriate for its setting and commensurate with its needs. And if we look at the settings specifically located where they are, then by all means, the condition 14 is probably whilst it's a bit broad in definition, I get what we say. It's essentially a direct correlation and direct link to what the planning scheme provides. We have to provide a condition that we fulfill.
So there's two parts to it, I suppose, and that is one is the firefighting part, and then the other is what might be the anticipated requirements for that type of development, and then the people, property and so on. Yeah, so you don't need to be satisfied as an assessor that how that's going to be, like in the application it doesn't say, like with rainwater tanks or on-site capture or from a bore or from a dam, or you don't need to be satisfied with that. That's the condition, it's up to them how they meet it. Is that what you say?
Mr. Mayor, through you, to a certain extent, we still need to conduct a site inspection. Condition number 19 does require that the applicant must arrange for a compliance inspection to be undertaken by Council's compliance officer and development engineer, during which time the applicant must adequately demonstrate that all conditions of this approval to its extent relevant has been complied with. So going out there, you understand the applicant on that day, you say, look, I've got these many cabins, I've got this manager's residence, based on my gross floor area and my anticipated demand, I provide this water supply capacity in compliance with the condition for the infrastructure.
And just to extend on that through, Mr. Mayor, for compliance, obviously it is much easier if we can say you must provide 1,000 megalitres of new development, but there's no tie to the planning scheme. We can't reasonably and relevantly apply such a condition. So if it is up to the applicant to determine how much water is required to service their development, and if at such time it becomes an issue with compliance, we can go and enforce that condition on them. Yes, it doesn't have a requirement about the minimum literage or megaliterage of water, but we can still approach them and say there are issues with the provision of water and property.
And as I explained previously, the questions that I have had back from the community and that got me wondering myself was more about where are they getting the water from? And I wasn't able to answer that question, and when I went for a look, I still couldn't answer the question, and I guess the question was, and you've explained it, that they don't need to demonstrate how they satisfy that condition up front. It's something that's done sort of retrospectively, like at the end. And as you say, you can't condition what that looks like, but you're not. Yeah, I was just thinking that in this process, they would probably have had to explain to you what that might look like, so you have a bit of an idea that they're going to be able to meet that demand for that water.
And then it's not too dissimilar for, say, an application that was for agricultural purposes. There is a requirement for the minimum amount of water that's required for the certain type of use they're using, but again, different application type, different provisions in terms of assessment of the scheme.
Thank you.
Sorry, that wasn't a timer, that was just playing around with technology here. Thanks. Any other questions, councillors, and any other of those, that update there, or any of those, monthly comparison figures? All right, councillors, well, the recommendation is there that we just receive that report. Councillor McIndoe's moved that, seconded by Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you, Joseph, for your skills on the microphone. Right, councillors, moving along from communities to corporate services, item 14.1, which is a report of the audit committee meeting, which is page 109. Acting Manager, Rodney, can you lead us through that, please? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure where Manager of Governance, Chris, at the present time, but the report is relatively straightforward. We had our audit committee meeting on the 14th of February, a few weeks ago. It's our first meeting with new committee chair, Graham Webb. So it's a bit of time for Graham to settle in, and you'll see the report there, a range of issues that were discussed on the day in the internal audit. Carolyn Eagle presented a report on progress update on the internal audit process, including the inventory management practices. Audit committee approved the proposed asset revaluation methodology by indexing asset values for this current year, pending the release of the cost indexation in March 2019. Sandy Schofield, Manager of Safety and Wellness, presented a safety and wellness update to the chair, which I must say I think it has been shared before, but his comment was it was one of the better reports he'd ever come across from the safety aspect, so well done to Sandy and her team. Audit Committee received and noted the amended fraud and corruption policy, which went to the Legal and Governance Committee meeting today and will be with the Council later on this afternoon. And bi-monthly workforce stats report was produced, and Turn On Technology project, which shall update the committee on how Toto is going, and they agreed for dates in the 2019 meeting schedule. The minutes of that meeting are attached for your information, and between Mark and I, we could answer any questions that we may have.
Councillor, any questions on the audit committee? All good? All right, councillors, well, that recommendation is there that just we receive those minutes and conclusion and recommendations from the internal audit final report on the inventory management practice, including PPEPA, we refer to that for implementation. So there's a little bit of an addition to that there as well. Anything you want to add, Mr. CEO?
I'd like to give you a recourse of the day, but I think you've covered it quite well. Mr. Mayor, perhaps we might just use the long form words in the resolution.
Regarding into the acronyms. So this will be interesting for me, yeah. So it is about personal protection. And P&A?
PA is what you talk about.
Portable and attractive. It's personal protective.
No. All right, councillors, well, I mean, if you've had a good read through those and happy with that recommendation, so happy to move that. Moved by Councillor Rolfe, second Councillor Grimmelton. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Now, this next item, 14, Councillor McInerney, did you want to declare interest here?
Did you want to inject there? Thank you for the tip from the ELT. Yeah, I'd like to further declare further a conflict of interest in this matter arising as 14.2, as defined in the Local Government Act 2009 under section 175D. The nature of my interest in this matter is line item number 3 pertains to a lighting infrastructure upgrade or the potential of at a sporting complex that bears my name. I've determined that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that it will lead me to making a decision on the matter that is contrary to public interest. I will best perform my responsibility by serving the overall public interest of the whole of the council's area by participating in the discussion and voting on this matter. Yep, so I will leave the room and allow the council to make the decision whether I partake or not partake in this matter further.
All right, thank you, Councillor McIndoe.
Is that not right?
Absolutely correct.
No, I just had a bit of pressure there.
Don't go too far along. All right, councillors, this is a decision making about a whole group of potential projects that we're going to do. Councillor McIndoe really only lends his name to this project, feels it's to derive no other benefit from it other than the fact that it's a major sporting facility for the whole of the region. He's properly declared his interest, and councillors, if there has anyone that have any objections to him coming back in here and discussing this matter.
I'd like to move he comes back in.
Righto, so it's been moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Syphon, that Councillor McIndoe can participate in the discussion and can come back to the room. All in favour? Thank you. Yes. He thought he was doing a cigarette. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McIndoe. Right now, I will hand over to Acting Manager of General Manager of Corporate Services, Rodney, and if you could lead us through these with Margaret Gatt, who's here in her official capacity today as the newest 50-year-old person in the room. Is that not correct?
No, well, you shouldn't say it.
I think there's a whole group of friends. There's a whole group of friends that would wish to know that it's Margaret's birthday today.
Yeah, that's probably right, but that's all. Very truthful.
Right, thank you. Thanks for the name, Rodney.
As I heard, the two workshops, the council workshop last week and the discussion yesterday, strategy meeting, the recommended projects under the 2019 to 21 Works with Queensland program as presented in the report. Mark is here if you have any questions on detail. I think you've had enough discussion that everyone understands what's in there, so I'll put it to council. Do you have any questions?
And Margaret, I did see that you forwarded I guess you said the other projects that we deliberated on to get to these. That's been circulated to councillors. So councillors, just before you do, they're the 12 projects adding up to the magic number of 2.5, which is their allocation. Questions or comments, right? Councillor Robb.
Mayor, number 9.
Yes.
And I think we asked that the shade sales Rubyvale flats be changed. It's not shade sales, is it?
It's a shed. It's a shed.
It's a shed, it's not shade
Develop a
sales.
hard roof structure and the descriptions.
Yeah, but that's,
It should be changed.
should be changed.
If you could get that. Okay.
All right. So can we, I guess you'd say we best give it a proper project side. So, what are they technically? A hard structure, cover?
Shade structure.
Shade structure.
Yeah, hard shade structure. Will Rubyvale Flats play equipment?
Playground.
Playground.
That's fine.
Hard shade structure, Rubyvale Playground.
Through you, Mr Mayor, sorry councillors, I did make that change overnight.
Any other changes there, councillor?
No, it's fine.
Well, councillors, that was a great run through that we did the other day, and obviously we had the chance to a little bit to think about those, and obviously some other funding that's coming subsequently. Is someone happy to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Daniel, second Councillor Syphon. So that's the 12 projects. Moved and seconded, all in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Roddy. Thank you very much, Margaret. Right. Councillors, next item is an update on the Toto project update. And General Manager Customer. That is not correct. Michelle obviously will lead us through that. You got help today?
I don't, but I'm happy to lead
Lead it.
and speak to the report that
Yeah,
I've approved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Sure.
Sorry? Oh, is there a PowerPoint to go with it? I've not seen the PowerPoint, I'm afraid.
It's really good.
That's okay, I can step through if they'd like. Thanks, Margaret. Oh, Michelle, we can watch the video.
Just, councillor, please note the spelling error there because, Michelle is a general manager of, commercial and customer services.
Customer and commercial services.
Customer and commercial services.
My name is.
Customers always first, remember?
That's it.
It's a bloody setup here, this one.
Over there, just me.
You want the me voting on?
Yes, please. Yes, I do like the music.
You.
Very important.
Top corner as well.
Oh, no.
Well, we can all say this together for the first time. It's playing together. Oh. Oh, that's very clever, aren't you? Oh, here we go, Aaron.
Good afternoon, Aaron. Is there anything, Clint and
You're
Margaret?
happy to see you, Clint.
Say goodbye now.
Michelle.
Well, I wouldn't mind the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to have a couple of minutes, or a couple of words, and then the officers to finish.
No, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Clint. We did mention you, and the general manager was very confident you were going to get through without you, but thank you very much for saving your life.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, and apologies for being indisposed. I was eating, which is not a surprise for myself. I'll hand over to Clinton to take us through the first few slides there in regards to where we're at with some of the actionable activities currently undergoing with the TOTO project, and I'll sort of jump in with a few of the change management aspects that are also ongoing as well throughout the project. So, sorry. So a big technical issue on that.
Thanks, Aaron, and apologies for our tardiness. So in terms of our TOTO project, the project has still been progressing. I guess the purpose of this slide is to acknowledge that a number of works have been completed over the last 12 months, which is supporting pieces to us actually turning on the Technology One product. So we have actually delivered upon our emails now being hosted in the cloud, our Windows 10 project, minus a few minor sites and devices that still need to be done, but the majority of that project has been completed, as well as the introduction of Office 365 and OneDrive to the organisation. All three of those components were required, I guess, technology changes that we needed to make in order to support moving to a fully cloud-based product. The other three phases that are on there are all wrapped up as part of the go live of the Technology One product. Originally, the ECM was, or our document management system was due to go live early, but learnings along the way and the integrations that it has with the rest of the Technology One product, we had to align it to go live with the rest of the Technology One modules. So in terms of go live, it has been locked in on the 1st of July will be our new go live date. A replication plan has been developed between CHRC and Technology One, which outlines, I guess, all the key tasks and acknowledges all the key priorities between Council and Tech One in order to ensure that we're in good shape to go live. So we did a bit of, I guess, action learning on sort of what had been going well and not so well, and put a plan in place to make sure that we could meet that 1st of July. A revised project plan has gone along with that to align all the key milestones to the revised go live date. And there have been ongoing meetings between the two CEOs, CHRC and Technology One. In terms of the phases of go live, so with the review of the project and the new go live date, a decision was made to bring forward some of the phase 2 items due to significant process on those. So strategic asset management and enterprise budgeting were two, I guess, modules that were originally part of phase 2, but due to them being able to be progressed, they pretty much, I guess, close to completion, so we brought them forward to be part of the phase one. ECM, as I mentioned before, got revised to go live at the same time, and the Intramats or GIS was a new addition. So in order to achieve, I guess, fully integrated mapping, it means that when you're looking at assets, customer requests, you can actually see live where on a map that actually is associated, which can improve, I guess, the ability to respond and deal with matters. In order to achieve that, we needed to move a component of our GIS and mapping system up into the Technology One cloud and use their Intramats product. So that is a new addition. That has been progressed quite well. So it wasn't a whole lot of extra work that we needed to do in order to achieve that. It was just adding into the scope of the overall project, as it wasn't originally a change that we were doing as part of the project. Phase two, the modules that are there, customer portals, corporate performance management and business intelligence, were all part of phase two originally, so those haven't been progressed yet, introduced as a phase two to the project. Aaron, I might hand over to you to talk to this slide around the change management aspects.
Yeah, so the change management's next phase has been running quite well. So to date, we've with the sea change plannings, we've been out and we visited every other site. There's a few sites still to go here in Emerald to, I guess, finish what we're kind of referring to as phase two of the change management work that we've been undertaking. Holistically, those sessions have gone extremely well. It was a good opportunity to reinforce some of the learnings from that first round of change management, where we're really starting to look at providing, I guess, a common set of a common tool set and a common language for all of our staff to start to be able to address and understand when issues with change or, you know, the items that were being presented to them were becoming too much from an operational standpoint and how they can deal with change, I guess, as individuals in the business. It's a great opportunity to get there again, I guess, reconfirm a lot of those learnings and also add new pieces of learning to individuals as well in that space to enable them to, I guess, continue in that change process. We've been able to show them a bit more of the software. So I've been out there and I've been doing, at every session I've been providing an overview and a presentation of the software, showing them what it looks like, showing things like timesheets and how that's going to work in the field, giving them understanding of some of the training elements and how we want to engage, especially from the external crew, external workforce, you know, crew by crew, the right devices in their hand at the right time to ensure they understand how they need to do their jobs within the new technologies. And the feedback on that has been really, really good. The response to the tech savvy training and our staff wanting to be involved in that, I think the numbers have grown initially from about sort of, you know, 20 or so to about 50 staff now that we've been identified through that program, through the change management program of staff that show, I guess, resistance and or are scared of technology or unsure how to use technology, to get them in those sessions to ensure that they understand and have, I guess, a level of confidence in being able to use new technology moving forward. We've been doing a little bit of work around some of our ADCAR surveys that have been put out there. So when we're looking at the awareness and desire and knowledge of our workforce, we've done a couple of surveys now to get an understanding and idea of, through the TOTO project, what the understanding of what we're trying to achieve is and how they're going about, and I guess their response to some of the change we're bringing. So we've done 2 sets of surveys on that now. The first one's been completed, the second one has only just been completed recently. What we wanted to do with that is actually, I guess, bring a report forward that shows our journey when it comes to change and how the change systems have actually get some real, I guess, tangible data around how our change journey has gone and how we can actually measure, and, I guess, staff's response and to the information that's been provided to them through those change sessions. So change is always one of those hard things that's not always hard to, it's not always easy to, I guess, give evidence to or show. A lot of it's going around to each session, talking to people, getting a feel for how they're going, how the conversations change when you're talking to individuals about the technology and how they want to use those things. So using that ADCAR information gives us a way of actually, you know, putting on paper, I guess, a progression of how we've gone from the first round of surveys to the second round of the surveys, and how the interaction and feedback we're getting from those has gone. And hopefully we'll see an increase in people's awareness and desire to want to utilise new software applications and how their preparedness for change is developing in those areas. I think from a change standpoint, that's probably all I've got there. Clint, do you want to continue on?
Thanks, Aaron. So the next few slides go through, I guess, some of the achievements and progress that has been made in recent times. So in November, we did get access to the Tech One's latest software release for the One Council solution, being 2018B. So that was, I guess, one of the items that required us to rethink our go live date in order to get access to that, because they only released that in late October. So we've been working on that release since November. Technology One did deliver on a redevelopment of the rates capping function in order to align with our requirements. So it was identified that it would not meet the way that we need to calculate and do our rates capping. So that was a win both for our organisation to be able to work with Tech One to actually get that enhancement put in place. And in December, on the 20th, we had an end-to-end demonstration provided by Technology One, which was provided to our module champions and other key members of the project. A lot of module champions either weren't involved back in the initial initiation of the project to actually see a live demo of the full product, or they'd been, I guess, so focused on their own individual parts of the system, so they hadn't actually been able to see the full picture. So that was a really, I guess, important piece to be able to allow them to actually see from end to end how it worked and how their little bit might have fitted into the rest of the overall system and processes. So those were really well received, and it was a good thing that the vendor was able to, I guess, put that back on for us. So that was one of the items that came out of that rectification plan to be able to address people's, I guess, overall picture of the system. So solution design documents have, I guess, been the buzzword for the project for the last couple of months. So that is walking through, I guess, how the system's configured, how it works, what its processes are, is it aligned to what our requirements are. So we've had Tech One consultants on site actually walking page by page through those documents. Some of them are in excess of 200 pages just for one particular area of the system. In order to ensure that our module champions fully understand how it works and what the systems are and what all the back-end configuration options are, and that it actually is going to be set up for our council. On the 1st of March, we did sign off on the HR and payroll and enterprise budgeting modules. And since then, we have actually signed off on all of the modules on the 8th of March.
It should be stated too, that was a big milestone for the project, having all the solution design documents signed off on time, on date, and a lot of effort and a lot of work has gone into by all the module champions to ensure that we hit that deadline and be able, and enables us now to, I guess, confidently move forward with the configuration elements of the project. And Technology One have those solution design documents now to start that work and providing us with a configured environment so we can start our user acceptance testing and the testing that we need to ensure we're ready for that.
Yeah. So we completed our business process reviews. In all that involved documenting, we had 267 processes across all the council, and that was important, I guess, to highlight any decisions or action points that we needed to address before go live. Some of those will be ongoing, and I guess efficiency opportunities, and they will be feeding into a business efficiencies team, which have you spoken to already, Michelle, will do at the end?
No, but we might give Daniel a couple of minutes if he would like to speak to that, basically.
And we also completed a second parallel pay run, which was successful overall. We've been working on the development of test plan templates, so that's in order to be ready for user acceptance testing. So that's our module champions actually documenting their processes in a format that they can actually record whether the system is working or not, allow them to actually track at what point might it fall over, or have we got all green lights in order that the system works and we can go live. So we have identified that there's almost 400 test cases that we need to actually test, and we're tracking around the 65% to date of developing those templates. So that is a large body of work that the module champions are having to take on, and it's a new thing for our council. We've never done that kind of extensive level testing on such a large a system of this size before, but we are, I guess, taking it chunk by chunk. We have made good progress also on data migration exercises, in mapping, I guess, our source data from the current system or Excel sheets, wherever it's stored, and mapping that to the import templates that we need to use for the Technology One product. And overall, though, those activities are sitting around the 57% mark. We have also been progressing in user training materials or e-learns. and they are currently all in the design and development stages. So coming up, we are moving into, I guess, the final review stages, so then we can actually have them ready to go to roll out end user training. So they are sitting overall around 55% over the whole, I guess, process. And I do apologise, but the last slide seems to have missed its content. So this one, alright, here we go. Anyway,
That's what.
So I guess the road to July at a high level. So the first dot point there we've already progressed past, which was the sign off on the final solution design documents, which was completed on Friday. And as Aaron touched on, this was a critical path milestone that we needed to accomplish so we could lead into the configuration phases. So we've got the configuration modules to be finalised by Technology One based on what is in those solution design documents. We still have some outstanding key user training for our module champions, and they are around business processes. So the actual tool that allows you to build electronic workflows to be able to have things route to the relevant person and automate things. We've got Doc1 templates, which are like your Word document templates that actually support your business processes for when you're sending out letters or generating reports. And Excel1 reporting, which is Tech1's report tool to enable to interrogate the back-end data and actually extract it and be able to present it for any kind of reporting. Aaron, did you want to touch on the improved budget item there?
We're really just undertaking an exercise at the moment to review the work orders and the tasks associated with the project and get a more detailed level of reporting to take back through the SteerCom to ensure that we do not have any budget issues moving forward. And that process will be presented to the next steering committee of the project, that reporting moving forward.
Thanks, Aaron. So in the data migration space, we'll be looking to trial all of our migration loads. So actually taking our source data and actually importing it into the Technology One system into a data migration environment to ensure that it's successful. And so I guess work out all the timings and that for the go live weekend. We'll be looking to finalise the test plan templates in order to be ready for user acceptance testing, which starts in May. And finalising the training materials and the delivery plan on how we're actually going to train all of our end users, which will commence in June. But in terms, I guess, the update from us, that's what we had. So over to yourself, Michelle.
Thanks, Clinton and Aaron, and through the Mayor, I suppose. I just want to take the opportunity to recognise the contribution and efforts of the staff within the organisation. And I don't want to undersell the effort that it took this organisation to get to that critical path milestone of the 8th of March, that we've placed this organisation in a position that we had met our commitment, and now over to Tech One to meet your next phase of the commitment. There are some 40 plus, I can't tell you the exact number of staff who were involved in that phase of the project, in walking through the system, reviewing documents, signing off solution design documents, that as Clinton quite rightly pointed out, some of them didn't receive a 200-page document until the day before. But the commitment of this organisation and that team is very much our corporate value, very much in action about commitment and teamwork. And I am so proud of this organisation and those staff that were involved in getting us to that milestone. I'm also really proud of the staff who supported them and back them up when business as usual still needs to be done, and module owners or a function lead person is taken out of the business as usual, but people are there backing them up. And I think this organisation is just absolutely incredible at the moment as we work through this project. So I just want to recognise that contribution from everyone. We are doing a praise and pizza lunch tomorrow for those people. It's not, you know, it's just little things like that, and thank you and recognition of the contribution and effort that are really important along the way. Our relationships with Tech One are very strong and very good, very positive currently, and everyone is working really well. We have had, I think I've said this to council before, a change out of project manager from Tech One side, and that has also been evident in regards to the project and how we progress through. I'd also like to acknowledge in the change management program that we're doing, that through that we had originally, I think about 21 of our very brave staff put up their hand and say, hey, you know, we're not so tech literate and we need some assistance, and they're very, very brave in that regard. We actually have 51 of our staff participating in a series of tech savvy training sessions. And we even have examples within this organisation where we have an entire work crew at Blackwater who are all coming to support another member of their team in undertaking the training. That's what's going on in this organisation, which we can all be really, really proud about. And so I'm really proud, and I'm really proud that we could meet that achievement, and wonderful team at this organisation. I'll hand over to Daniel, who might just like to speak quickly about the business process efficiency team. That's been set up to get some wins along the way in regards to business efficiency as we move to 1 July. And I suppose in regards to 1 July, we very much are on track at this point in time to make that time.
Thank you, Michelle. I would first like to reinforce Michelle's message around the remarkable effort that the staff put in, and when we start to combine this with everything else that's happening across the organisation, particularly capital delivery, there's a lot on everybody's plate. For the organisation to get where we are has been a monumental effort, so I would like to reinforce that. But in particular, the business efficiency project team, aptly referred to as BEPT, is focusing on a couple of areas. Primarily, we're looking at how are we going to quantify the savings across the organisation, or the efficiencies across the organisation in time dedicated to certain tasks that the new Toto system will ideally make more efficient for our organisation. So the BEPT team consists of myself leading that with Mark involved, Rebecca Brosnan as well from the customer service side, and a number of representatives across the every department in the organisation. So we'll be taking a corporate hat to that team, making sure that we have at the end of the day an ability to map out our new business processes, which means that the implementation of the software has crossed our entire organisation. It's not just one piece of software. So we'll be reporting through to the steering committee at this stage, which has Councillor Rolfe sitting on that. So through Councillor Rolfe, we'll be able to keep the councillors updated on the overall efficiencies that the Toto system will bring to the organisation. And at this stage, we'll be meeting every fortnight for the next 12 months. So we'll be putting a fair amount of effort and resources into making that team working in conjunction with everything else that the Toto team is doing.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hall, Councillor Hall.
I'll just make a comment about the e-learning. And it was something that was talked about right at the beginning about things like e-learning. And it didn't seem to be taken up by Tech One, by their side of it very well. Aaron, how's it going now? Producing those e-learning, that structure so that people can.
So they've been progressing quite well at this point in time. We've had, it's one of the, I guess, the through the rectification plan and having to bring in some of the extra resources that's been discussed at council previously, was getting some assistance to build those items, because the Technology One process is a bit archaic in that space. They don't do a lot when it comes to the training and development, so we had to build all that material to make sense to our environment as well. A lot of those modules have been created now. I think the percentage was, sorry, I missed that percentage before, but we are signing off. So all the functional leads are signing off on those particular items. Myself and Tenure House had a meeting last week with a representative from AAX to start looking at the training plan and how we're rolling out that training to the business as well. So I'm very confident that that's moving forward at the pace that we need it to.
Ongoing, that's something that staff really need, isn't it? So that they can actually access.
Yeah, we've talked about that too from a budget standpoint. I've had a long chat with Tanya and training about how we start to budget for and ensure that those training materials also stay up to date, because at the rate at which the software will change, you might have them right year one, but then they introduce a new patch a month later, and then the software could potentially change as well. So how do we make sure we're keeping those materials up to date? Also a very important part of our future thinking as well.
And then just to congratulate them on doing a payroll. Payroll seems to be the one thing that if you don't get it right, it's zero. So, yeah, congratulations
as well, Councillor Raper. So we're not there yet. So
but it's something that.
Personal, yeah, get the money to pay the people, so rate run is also very, very important.
Well, Councillor Ward, there's a recommendation there, and thank you, gentlemen, just for your compliments to all the team. I know we see that you've work to do, so it's been particularly harrowing 6 months, I think, just recently, so we're well aware of obviously the efforts that you've put in, so not noticed well, so thank you very much. Look, there's a recommendation there that we received that. Councillor, someone having moved that, moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded Councillor Walsh. Moved and seconded, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Thanks, Aaron and Clint. I'm shocked to see that you were eating just before you got here, Aaron.
I want to go back to it, I love the sandwich.
Exactly right. Not like you at all.
Got to be consistent.
Councillors, we're on page 141, which is to do with regional airport security screening fund, so that fast. Solomon is here, I see in his spoke location, though it's quite high visibility effort has been put in today, so Solomon's here. Michelle, you want to introduce this agenda item for us?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the item before you, Council, today is somewhat a matter of procedural in regards to there is a grant available for the changes in security that we require at the airport. So I'll just hand over to Solomon to speak to his report, please.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, councillors. I do look a little bit like a PE today. The matter, as Michelle rightly says, is quite procedural, but there is a wider implication, of course. So during 2018, the newly super Department of Security, Department of Home Affairs, they came and they notified all airports in Australia of increased screening requirements. So our procedures have to change, but also the machines have to change. We through there, along with a number of other airports, went back through the industry body, lobbying government, saying there's a huge cost to impost here. Government in the federal government, that is in the last federal budget, came and said there's a pot of money for airports now to basically go and purchase machines out of. So they pre-vetted airports, they determined your eligibility, and then also determined how much of the pot of money you could claim. Of course, as all grants, these things really cover all your costs, especially the ongoing cost of running the screening point. That's gonna change. We're gonna need more space. Those types of things, they do not. It's not included in the grant, unfortunately. However, it's still money on the table, and whether we take the grant or not, council will have to implement the new screening requirements anyway. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and prepared the application. It's quite a straightforward application, luckily. The next portion before we can press the submit button is we need the board of the organisation, which by us as council, to accept and endorse the application. There's also always the little small print at the end that says, yes, we know that the grant isn't going to cover everything, and the grant money is the money you're going to get. So that we put in the resolution also. That is the short version. I'm happy to take questions.
Councillors, questions? Or is this fairly regulatory or this in nature? Yep. Moved by Councillor Saito, seconded by Councillor McIndoe. So there's two parts to that recommendation there. And I thank you for the descriptions of them, and obviously there's a lot of information there. Moved and seconded, councillors, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. All right. No, we have to leave you on your own for this report.
Yes.
You need Rhiannon to come up.
No.
I'm sure that's okay.
Not at all, I'm good.
Councillor, this was quite a very quite an interesting day out at Springshore. Obviously, this is a project that from the circumstances of a deficit, this has turned into a great fill-up for the community of Springshore and the district, and Michelle, if you'd like to lead us through that.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So this report, councillors, will now round out the work that we've done in regards to facilitating a banking agency at the Springsure office. Councillors will recall that previously you had resolved in principle support for the concept and had negotiated delegation to the Chief Executive Officer in which to progress those arrangements. So this is a collaborative project that has occurred in regards to the developments, Central Highlands Development Corporation. I suppose initially fielding out a financial institution who would be interested, and a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes by council staff in regards to the logistics and working through agreements in which to bring this to fruition. Council has also the Development Corporation has made an investment with the institution, but Council has also, for Council's awareness, made a $3 million investment in the institution, and I can say that those rates are very, very competitive, if not better than some of our other institutions where we invest money. So that has been very good in that regard. So the initial licence agreement is for a 12-month period. That hopefully firms up the business model that it can work, and I have every confidence that it can. We then potentially have a model that may potentially work at other council offices throughout the region as well, should the need or interest come to hand in that regard. So, as I said, I'd just like to acknowledge the contributions of council staff also, who have been very instrumental in bringing this to fruition.
Thank you. And clearly, it was a great day in Springsure because, as Michelle rightly points out, certainly the Springsure staff have been working very cooperatively with Brown and his team, I think, to obviously get the location. You can see the agreement there, the little yellow corner. So there's a few little modifications that need to be done there, but they'll obviously, they commenced, I guess you'd say, activities to start the previous Tuesday and kicked off on that day. Councillor Rolfe and the General Manager, obviously, of Capricornian cut that cake. And there was a couple of, obviously, Springsure locals that had signed up as members as we performed that duty. And Greg Jemison, was it? Gemma? And who else signed up that day?
I can't think of the name.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yep. And so it was just really an auspicious start. And obviously, people had come along to see.
Should I make something up there? I'm just a well-known local.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In a blue shirt, yeah, I remember that. But anyhow, look, it was, from, and I did recognise Councillor Rolfe on the day. I mean, obviously, in a lot of cases, communities, I don't suppose ever give up, but they certainly strive very hard to make sure that when some of these services are taken away, that there is a replacement. And we commended Capricornian for taking that space. And they were very, very positive, as was their whole team. So hopefully it'll provide the banking services for the community of the region for years to come if we can. This model works. They spoke about one in Miriamvale. It's been going, I think, for 25 years.
Yeah,
it's just turned out really well. So great deal of community support. We certainly qualified the Springsure people as being people that are stickers. They support things, and hopefully that'll be a good partnership for many years to come. So councillors, the recommendation is there that we receive that report, moved by Councillor Rolfe. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Councillors, can we just, our CEO might need to depart in about 10 or 15 minutes. I'd just like to run through, if we can skip forward to the ALGA National General Assembly call for motions. That's it on page 219, and we'll come back then to Peter Manning and discussing those the water restrictions. So, Scott, if you could lead us off through these.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks for indulging me. I'll be brief. We did discuss this at the last meeting, and these are the resolutions that have been prepared in preparation for the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly. Will take place from the 16th to the 19th of June 2019 at Canberra. And I might just take you directly to page 222 or 266 And the first one is that the Australian Local Government Association advocates to the Minister of Home Affairs that it is appropriate that any new regulatory security requirements imposed by the federal government on regional airports that result in significant cost increases should be offset with funding assistance opportunities to ensure regional communities are not further disadvantaged. That's a follow-on from the report you just heard. Recently, there's the objective and a summary of key arguments there. It's not locked in, there's an opportunity if you would like to reconstruct a sentence or reflect a point that may not be reflected, we can do that. The second one is on page 224, and it is quite simply that the Australian Local Government Association reinstate funding for the mobile bus stop program. They're the two that we've got so far, and you'll recall when we discussed this at the last council meeting, there was a willingness to want to investigate the possibility of supporting the citrus industry through a motion around biosecurity relating to citrus canker, if it was deemed appropriate. And I'm happy to report council that I had carried out some investigations on that matter, and there is an avenue for council to submit a motion around the Australian government taking a more proactive response to resourcing the prevention of biosecurity threats as opposed to having to have the resources in place for responding to actual threats. And we're working with Dr. Andrew Miles to prepare that draft resolution for council's consideration. You'll note in the report on page 219 that we've got a little bit of leeway. We have to have this submitted by the 29th of March, so I hope that at the next council meeting I can share with you a proposed motion around biosecurity that does indirectly support the citrus industry, but it doesn't specifically focus on citrus canker. It's pitched at a higher level, and I think that it would be a lot more effective if we did it that way. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, happy with that?
Yes.
Okay. So,
there's a resolution there,
with those two there, regional airport funding and smart cities. Someone have the
smart cities.
The smart cities, right, yeah.
Hang on, that one already. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. So, again, moved by Councillor Nicholson, second Councillor Brindlecombe, that develop those motions, and then you've got some wording there, so moved and second. Everyone happy with that? All in favour? Yes? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quick. The next one follows on, and that's about picking a representative team to attend that important event, national event at Canberra. The recommendation is worded in the customary format, which is suggesting that the mayor and deputy mayor, along with any councillors identified, and along with the CEO, be those ambassadors to represent Central Highlands Regional Council. You'll note in the finance section on page 226, there's a cost associated with attendance, and the budget has been dialed back somewhat, given that council is not carrying out their training, their IAP2 training, so we did dial those budgets back, and we might have been a bit too conservative. But there's capacity there to send perhaps an additional councillor, but not too many unless we were to tweak that budget, so just draw your attention to that.
Yeah, so councillors, I do that, we keep it running, like you should say, the tab on just how we travel, like everyone else in this building has to do. And so councillors, I guess, this is obviously the preeminent conference to attend. There is obviously the opportunity, I think from a timing perspective, there would potentially be a new or replaced government at the time. So there will be obviously a lot of people taking that opportunity to be there, but there is a cost involved, councillors. As is normally the case in the event that there is some advocacy work, myself and the deputy mayor will do that, and the CEO. So I'd like to think that councillors like to go. If you want to go.
I wouldn't mind going, but could I get you to go and talk to Tracy? It's the day I cleaned the fridge magnets, and I don't know what I would do.
Well, Councillor Maggett, ordinarily I would, but since you mentioned Tracy's name, I'm not interested anymore, so that would be too hard to ask.
Sorry, it's been a long day.
Mr Mayor, look, I'm happy, look, if there was someone else that did want to go ahead with the budget, I'd be happy to. I did it last year, if there was some, and if you're happy to tap out and give someone else an opportunity. But either way,
I guess with the greatest respect, it is the opportunity of doing some advocacy work, so I mean, I'm not saying, trying to pick a team here, but I think it's appropriate that the mayor and deputy mayor go for that reason, if that's possible, and other councillors if you want to go, so.
We'll give you, oh, wait, last year.
Yeah, I'll give you, plenty of advocacy to do.
And I've been once this term, so I'm happy for another council.
I went last year to this one, so I'm happy to give someone else a break.
Fair enough.
Councillor Bell's not here.
No, I don't think he'd be interested in going to.
Well, he said that he didn't go, so no one else?
Election, I think.
That's fine, councillors.
Never been such a hard sell.
I'd say,
It's in the middle of
Councillor Bell may take.
It's freezing.
No, he would certainly indicate to us, and I don't think.
I think that yourself and the deputy, yeah, you're doing a brilliant job.
All right.
Thank you, councillors.
All right. All right, look, the lean team, it'll be, the mayor, myself, deputy mayor Gale, and, the CEO Scott Mason, so someone happy to move those? Everyone's. Councillor Syker, see, I've never been so pleased that people want to see this. Councillor Syker, Councillor Nixon have moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Right. Thank you, councillors. Back to the, well, if you want to do what you're here.
Yeah, I know that's mucking things around a little bit, but, councillors, we draw your attention to page 240 and 266. That's the departmental update from the CEO. Important little meeting that was held on the 21st of February. Council was represented by its mayor, deputy mayor and CEO when we met a few Sunwater representatives to hear an update on the Rookwood Weir project. And it was the night prior, on the 20th of February, that that roadshow presented an update to members of the Juringa community. And they reported that around about 35 people turned up for that update. That's pretty impressive for a small town, small community, big region though. I have attached the presentation that they provided, and you should refer to that for additional detail and also to get a graphic representation of some of these assets or projects that are being talked about. It's not there, but I referenced that the presentation that was delivered to the CQ Rock meeting in Brisbane on the 6th of September. I hadn't really wanted that to be in there as well, because the presentations are both important and both had some differences and they were relevant, but we can make sure that you get a copy of the 6th of September one through Docs on tap. I might make a note to do that. And this is a very brief report. We recommended that Sunwater liaise with growing CQ as it's identified prospective water use and recently completed an ACIL Allen profile of ag and fisheries production in central Queensland. Similarly, the accurate soil type data that exists for land abounding the Fitzroy River upstream of the proposed Rookwood Weir should be accessed to promote new business opportunities. Sunwater acknowledged that the current major interest is in when will the water become available and how much will it cost. Our representatives added that reliability is a key factor necessary to attract sustainable investment in ag enterprises. They spoke about Queensland purchasing policy, and that does apply to this project because it exceeds $100 million, and that's having a delaying impact on the project until such time as it's signed off by the Minister, particularly the weighting criteria for components such as local content, Indigenous employment, training, etc. There's 6 key components to the project. The centrepiece is Rookwood Weir. There's Foley Vale Bridge on Abbas Creek Road. There's the Riversley Bridge, the intersection upgrade at Gigango, Thirsty Creek Road, and Hanrahan Crossing. It's expected that the contract will be awarded for the Weir build itself by February 2020. The Thirsty Creek Road and the Gigango intersection upgrade projects are expected to be completed by Christmas this year. There's potential opportunities for council to explore, possibly the supply of quarry products and possibly the provision of roadwork services. Sunwater is keen to tap into the Emerald Shire Council / Central Highlands Regional Council experience around water marketing and ag development. The Rookwood Weir project does not incorporate any distribution infrastructure, so at this stage the adjoining landowners have a comparative benefit. Regarding expertise, council recommended that Sunwater contact Mr. Jeff Kavanagh, who's our water advisor, Mrs. Liz Alexander, who's our agribusiness coordinator, or Central Highlands Development Corporation's agribusiness coordinator, and Professor John Roll from the Central Queensland University regarding the Growing CQ initiative and the work that they've completed today. It was also mentioned that council has undertaken its own agricultural stocktaker copy, which was provided to visitors. The CQ ROC was also identified as an appropriate stakeholder to liaise with on a regular basis. And to that end, they've been asked to be a deputation at the next CQ ROC meeting. Happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure the Mayor and might have some specifics that they might want to elaborate on. But it is an important project, and through their willingness to consult with the council and their interest in tapping into that knowledge and expertise of the former Emerald Council and Central Highlands Council, I think we'll have an active involvement from an information sharing perspective, and we'll make sure that those reports come back to the full council so that we're all up to speed. But it is quite exciting, for the region. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Questions, Robert? In terms of the references, I mean, the Growing CQ have actually just completed an agricultural stock take of their own, which they did with Hassel Allen as an extension of the work that Sanders organised of THDC had completed. So, with the greatest respect, I mean, they're only, whilst there's certainly been something they've extended, they've certainly taken the lead from Central Highlands and extended it through the Growing CQ. It would seem that in terms of these people being functionally involved with the construction would necessarily look across the marketing and the sale of water allocations, and it was quite, I suppose, a little bit of a surprise to see where I guess that's at. But I mean, we're very happy to share, I guess you'd say, and extend some knowledge to them to obviously potentially look at marketing that a little differently from, the irony is Growing CQ, in fact, through some RDA contact, we're actually assisting the original assessment of the site with potential water sales. So in a big circle, we've actually referred it back to where they started. So given that they probably have a little bit better understanding of the region now. So exciting, and obviously out of those 6 projects that Scott talked about, that was actually a whole package, a whole contract, and they're going to break that up to actually offer that in a couple of pieces to potentially finish it. And it's very clear that they've got a mandate to get cracking on this. So in fact, a lot of the infrastructure is potentially going to be, I think by certainly 2020, some of the stuff's going to be happening, and notwithstanding just how they go with marketing water. So it seems to be pretty quick sticks where they are at the moment. So any other questions? Or? Quite some significant structures. That bridge across Holywell is 110 kilometres an hour, two lanes. Doesn't quite match the infrastructure running up both sides of it, but anyhow, we'll see how we go when we get there.
It's on page 251.
So there,
Artisan Pressure. Oh no, that's Riversley Yellow. To page 248. 248.
And that will effectively change some of the traffic patterns on Angel Road, which will put some pressure on obviously the 15 kilometres between there and the end of the current Richmond. Yeah. All right, councillors, the recommendation now to receive that. So thank you, Scott, for that. Someone like to move that? Moved by Charlie, Councillor Brimblecombe, seconded by Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Against? Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
Now, Councillor, if we can go back now to 16.1, which is on page 214.
What page is this?
Sorry?
What page 2?
215.
215.
So this is under certainly Gerard's infrastructure and utilities department, and certainly Peter Manning would be here to speak about this. Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you, Mayor, Peter, I'm going to hand that over to you, but I just want to give context here that this is only one bit of the larger conversation. Just to get clarity of the scenario when we get to, as we suggested in the report, get to what's it level, but basically when we get to level 3, with the bill considered with a regime where we can give warning letters and possibly consider enforcement. I'm not necessarily keen on the enforcement idea because it will cost resources. So it is simply to quantify the delegation, which part of the process was that we thought we didn't have a delegation, but we do. So that will change. So Peter, over to you and just talk us through the.
Mr. Mayor, before Peter starts, I'll open as well. So last week when CEO Scott was away last week, so I was looking after the reviewing the reports, and Peter and I had a couple of discussions. And acting manager of governance, Chris Yosen, was also away last week, so we weren't quite clear about delegations existing or not. And knowing the potential for these type of infringement notices to finish up in a courtroom somewhere, felt it best to seek some legal advice. So we put the report out as it is, so councils were aware of the desire to start implementing an infringement regime, and at the same time sought the legal advice. So the King Company have come back since that time. The delegated authority has already been put in place by council, so the second part of that recommendation, as noted up there, that can be removed. The other thing from King & Co is regards the actual quantity of the infringement. So you'll see reference in the report as to what council looked at before a couple of years ago. And Peter had initially recommended in the report that council go for 3 units at $391. Advice from King & Co is that council doesn't have a say in that. It's for an individual person who cops an infringement notice. It is 3 units, $391. And if it is a corporation, it's 15 units at a cost of 15 units, $1,958.25, so quite a significant month for a corporation. So it's not needed as part of the resolution, it's simply in the legislation, that's standard practice. The only thing for council to take note of in the recommendation is removal of that second dot point that we had up there. The rest of the report, I'll throw across to Peter to outline what's going on.
So, yeah, good afternoon, councillors. Obviously probably covers a lot of what I was going to say. So what we were looking at doing is, as we step up the restrictions, to have, obviously, as we go through that, what we want to do is educate people to do the right thing. But then if people don't, it's what power do we have in place to actually enforce the restrictions. Older correspondence we sent out seemed to have that sliding scale. I couldn't find anywhere in our system where that had been approved or delegated. So the purpose of this was I wanted to simplify the process, and having got the legal advice after preparing this, as it says, as council, we don't set that. It has actually been set under the state penalties enforcement as that 3 units for an individual and 15 units for an organisation. The advice from King & Co is obviously all these things are discretionary, so that's why we're in the process of educating, and then I'm proposing, then we give a warning, and then the infringement. And in terms of why we've taken out that recommendation about delegating that power, that is already under our delegations. If somebody is appropriately appointed as an authorised person, they would have the power to issue those infringement notices. So we haven't.
One question through the mayor. You talk about the state legislation. Does that apply to every water service?
Yes, so what they've done, I guess in here I said that the Water Supply Act has that range of penalties, which actually gets up to really big numbers.
To every water supply?
Yes, well, I guess going back a step. So as a water service provider, we and all the others have the ability to put in the restrictions in terms of if it's an emergency or if we're doing it with our demand management, which is our drought plan. And that's under that particular part of the Water Supply Act, Safety and Reliability Act, and then under that there is the penalty if people don't comply with restrictions. And then under the State Penalty Act, the state government has decided, well, within that range for an individual it's 3, and for a corporation it's 50.
So we can't make a local law.
The advice was that, you know, that's been set by the state, so we can't do something that contradicts the state. But the choosing to issue infringement notices is discretionary as to whether we choose to do it or not.
So we can choose or not to, we just can't choose the level.
Yes, that's right. So the discretion is the deciding to issue infringements, but the level is set.
It's all done. It's all done under the Water Supply Safety and Reliability Act 2008. So it overrides any local laws, even if council wanted to do local. The Act itself says this is how it shall work.
How long has that been around? Do you know?
But it comes down to a resources issue as well. Then you can have an infringement regime, but you need to have the people out there. Part of the problem you'll come across once you put these heavier restrictions on is you'll start receiving phone calls from the neighbours complaining about the neighbour watering all night long. What are you doing about it? So
Yeah, I'm not against just having something, I just have never seen that water supply act before.
well, it's only since 2008, so it's not that long ago.
2008.
Just about time.
So, years.
Sorry, questions? Yep, sorry.
Yeah, through the
Yes,
chair. So what, I guess if we approve this, then what would be the process? I guess when do we trigger sending out a warning letter or an infringement notice?
So I'll take the liberty to speak to this. I was trying to read the first part of the report and didn't pick it up. Essentially, what we're saying here is we will phase it in during level 2 as resources permit, with written warnings only and with full resourcing for enforcement by means of both written warnings and infringements by the time we impose level 3 for the major towns. Speaking with Peter and the rangers, we will probably fund additional resources, meaning that the current rangers are going to give us coverage. Pete, with one man, won't be able to do the job for the whole shire. So at the end of the day, we're looking at a model with the local laws people that we can actually utilise their time and possibly supplement their resources. The intent is definitely between 2 and 3 at this stage, not to really want to infringe. That's why we articulate clearly we want to give people warnings, we want to get the message across. So with this report, it's just simply making aware that we are moving to a regime, and I thought we had to do it by delegation, we don't. So effectively we're moving to a regime where we could infringe, but it's definitely not our first choice.
So just through the chair, so I've mentioned this previously today and we've all had a discussion out in the lunchroom, etc. But can we please get the messaging right, with the right graphics on the messaging about the water restrictions? Please don't put green grass and a sprinkler. You're telling them they can't have green grass and a sprinkler. So can we please really get the messaging correct and get it out there now and not when we get to level 5, please?
Noted, Councillor, and quite frankly, I was more concerned about the wording, and quite frankly, I didn't even pay attention to the graphics. So we'll speak with the comms people and we'll rethink how we do the graphics.
Through the chair, I've got a few questions around, I guess, our current restrictions and also I guess, suggestions around clarification or wording. Do you want me to raise them now or in general business?
No, we're doing general business, we'll deal with this now, and then we'll do that in general business, but I think they will get it right.
And Peter's got a report later on that also starts giving council context of volumes and capacity and allocation. So this is a standard report, and as I say, it was a bit premature, but it's good that you're aware of the process we can follow. We can pick up on the broader topics later.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so there's a quick just in the event we do go to, sorry, your question?
Yes, I do. Sorry, Chair. Just in regards to the, should we go ahead with this, and I'm not sure whether I am in support of this, but should we go ahead, is it a guilty until proven innocent or innocent until proven guilty scenario that we'll be adopting?
Through the chair, no, we can't just go and assure. If a complaint comes in, because that's what it's going to be initially, we will have to go out and have a look. We won't, it's not going to be, we issue it straight away. Obviously, we will have to investigate first.
Yeah, no, it won't be, there has to be evidence in terms of not the neighbour saying so, but if we rock up there and the sprinkler's running at 12 o'clock, obviously there's enough grounds to say we've got a problem. But if the neighbour claims it's
I'm here now, and Councillor Cotton Smith come past now, and I was here this morning and turned my tap on.
Yes,
She would do that. Look, I'll be a little bit more serious, but there is neighbours out there like that, don't get me wrong. It shouldn't happen too often. But there's also power outages, there's also battery problems with sprinklers. Now we're speaking level 2, moving to level 3. Under level 2 we can still have our irrigation sprinklers on. But things go wrong with them. We all experience issues with them. So I'm just trying to understand, because it's important, or it is to me.
Well, there's a clear message, and this is a message that's been going out, is that there are people now who are on the journey with us all and understand that there is obviously a critical water supply shortage. There's a need to be at level 2 and whatever the mechanisms are under the current drought management plan that we have. And they're saying if we're doing it, we want everyone to do it. And I don't really, I can't say that we're shying away from compliance, but part of the obligation here is if we're going to ask people to come on the duty, and that's everyone, then we've got to be prepared to act on those matters that are about compliance. And we will have to, because otherwise it looks quite disingenuous.
I'm just concerned, do we have our restrictions, criteria levels 1, 2, 3 and 4 right? Now
that's our drought management plan. It's too late for right. That is what we have. And that is what we're sticking to. And that can be the only message we're telling people. We don't have within the variables in our water supply and our bulk water provider, particularly Netherland and Blackwater, those are the indefatigable rules that we have and the expectation that we have. There are lots of variations that people have thought of, but the reality is we pick a height at the Fairburn Dam with the water supply levels that we've had since 2009. There may be some more intricate details about delivery and how that can happen, but the reality is with the current prevailing water conditions on high priority water and the expectations that we've been given and indications for next year, it warrants the change to level 2 under the drought management plan that we have. And we respond accordingly.
I'm just going to say through the chair, yes, as you said, the drought plan was written in 2009 with those trigger levels in it. We haven't been down at these levels since that was written, so we obviously are going through this process. We'll record any learnings we have so that if there are things that can be done better next time, we're writing them into an updated plan.
I'm not saying that they can be done better, and I understand your passion and your increase in the explanatory there, Mr. Mayor, but in February and in January, in total, we used 37 megalitres out of the dam, 37,000 megalitres. The month before, we used 35,000 megalitres out of the dam. 35,000 is actually half of Rookwood Weirs' annual supply.
That's right.
So we're already under restrictions then, and as we're moving forward in February, as I said, 17,000 megalitres of use. Now, our communities in Emerald, Blackwater, Tieri use 600, not 6,000, just 600 of that. And an incredibly small percentage of our high priority water is getting utilised by other high priority water users, and also a large amount of evaporation. I'm just saying, my view is there is very little difference at the end of the day what these restrictions, and then we're going to impose, potentially here today, impose a further fine or a penalty. And I'm just
This is just a provision for enforcement, which goes with the levels that we've adopted and are in our drought management plan. The discussion you're talking about usage and potentially, if we were the sole had the sole control of our water supply, when the only people that drew on it, that's fine. But what you're talking about is a completely separate water supply bulk provider who's notwithstanding all the uses of $35,000 or $30,000 per month by all the high priority users. The reality is they're only licensees, and if they've used all their water by the end of March, then obviously there'll be even less taken water from there, or in fact they might run their whole supply out. So what we're at the whim of is not necessarily what everyone else is using. Is it about how much water is going to be left at the end of the water year, and what will be the delivery arrangements from our bulk water provider. So that is something well and truly out of our hands. So we work with exactly what's in front. I'm not passionate about it. What I'm saying is there's a course of action here that we don't have any, I guess you'd say, choice about. We've got a drought management plan that picks levels for us. That's the only thing we can tell our community, and that's the level of risk we don't want to expose our community to. I understand that these slight changes isn't a lot of water, but we cannot keep running the risk of saying we ignore that. And then at some point in time say, by the way, the operating of the delivery for next year is not going to be 70%, it's going to be 50%. And then we're back to just the amount of water we can use. We have no more entitlement to any more water, despite how much is left in there. It belongs to other users, other industries, the resource sector. It belongs to a whole heap of other people. That's all we can work with. But look, can we deal with that probably in Peter's second report, because there's some issues there. But this is just about the implementation of our compliance. So just making sure that whatever we've adopted now, we can actually make sure that we can actually enforce it. So is someone happy to move that?
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Cycler. Is there someone to second it? Seconded by Councillor Grimblestone. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? So that's, what are we doing? 7-1. Yep, thanks, Marty. Right. Now, can we get to, and this is where we get the infrastructure report now, with Peter's report.
Yes.
Okay, so councillors, can we go to page 237, and we'll capture some of these other, I guess you say, concerns that we have.
Does Peter want to get the easy one on anyway?
Well, I would suggest so, because you might be difficult after that, mate. So this is the Fairburn Channel Irrigation Scheme, the local manager.
So, councillors, this was an update that was requested after the last council meeting. So we discussed the council as a customer supporting the establishment of Fairburn Irrigation Network as local management of the channel scheme in Emerald. And that was supported subject to getting opinion on whether we could be, as council, a shareholder, and whether we would be subject to any additional financial liability. We obtained that opinion from King & Co, which was basically saying, as a company that satisfied certain parameters, we were able to be a shareholder. If it was a bigger corporation, we'd have to get treasurer approval, but this came under what we could do under the Local Government Act. And that as a company limited by shares, we would not have any financial liability if things went wrong. So we submitted the support and acceptance form a week or so ago. And I guess as an update, as of today, or as of Friday, the voting deadline closed and they did get over 70% acceptance of the proposal. So that has got that majority of local customers supporting local management of the scheme. And that was on their website as of today. So I guess any questions on that?
It was Principality Council Joel that raised the question, but yes, so it's all good. We potentially become a shareholder of the scheme.
And I think the notification I had on Friday was with the voting had already achieved a 70%
yes.
approval outcome. Yeah.
And I did hear today, at the previous meeting I was at, that yes, they've done the close out on voting and they're starting to write to customers.
If there's no questions, councillors, so the second report, what we're going to do is we're now going to institute a monthly report, roughly in that format, on all things, water levels, etc., etc. I presume councils would appreciate that. So Peter, you just want to give us the high points?
Yes, so as Gerard said, because of where we are, we want to give regular updates to council on water levels of various places. So I guess when you look at that first one, it's keeping a track of particularly Fairburn, how much water is going out of it, and tracking what we will be using. And as Councillor McIndoe said, we are in the order of 600 megs a month, and the usage out of the dam is obviously a lot more than that. I'm updating this myself on a sort of weekly basis. You can see that, starting at this month, that's slowing down, which I think is although today's not a good record, cooling temperatures and depending on what crops are being watered at the time. So I'm just going to keep this going as a regular update of where we're at. We are doing the further planning in the background of what other things we might be doing as we're going through the restrictions. I was at the Irrigators Advisory Committee meeting with Sunwater today, so that gave us the update on where they're looking at of installing pumps at the dam to start to be able to keep supplying water as the dam level drops below the dam intakes. So for the side that feeds us, there will be pumps installed up at the dam next week. Tested, they don't need to use them straight away, but they're going to have them there ready to run, and then they'll also be putting the ones for the Selma Channel as well.
So a little bit of context around our water usage, and that's what I say, the relativity to the total water usage is not a significant percentage, but our allocation is 5,700 megalitres, is that correct? So if you're using 600 a month, then obviously, if it averaged out over the year, well, you're using more than your allocation.
Oh, sorry, if I...
Plus black water.
Plus black water,
Yeah.
So, ours is, we're using that sort of 400-ish a month anymore.
Yeah.
And yes, that.
And that's
the other point of us, putting on restriction is conserving to aim not to use all of our allocation this year, so that we can carry over to next year.
On the basis of 30 to 70% indicated, water sharing arrangement next year, 5 priority water. Let's say it's 50%. Well, that's 2,500 megalitres. Well, effectively, at even 400 a month, that's we're going to exceed that quite substantially if we're using it just the way we're using it. if there was no more inflow. So that's the scenario I guess you work with when you look at the drought management plan, rather than, you know, how much water is there, how much, you know, we're not a great part of it, or we're not, because we're not licensed to have any more great part of it. So, you know, the reality is, under these usage conditions, and even if it drops down a little bit, if that was the worst case scenario for carry over next year, we need to have a bit of water, obviously.
Yeah, and these numbers, you know, will be dropping, and you can see the curve flattening out a bit on the Sunwater site, which will be people who have had their small amount of NP water and or carryover this year, having used it up, and you know, depending on how much people are deciding to save for carryover, it impacts what that drawdown looks like.
So I guess it's just the right time that Councillor Jett had a few questions about or thoughts about.
So the questions I have are around, so I'm like fully supportive of the fact that we're at level 2 and that we've started our restrictions around, or further restrictions around how we use our water outside, I guess, for gardening purposes. I guess I want to understand, well, there's one, I think the wording that we've got for usage of water in the garden bed, for garden beds, you know, we've provided these massive timeframes that people can irrigate, and it might just be good to clarify around a reasonable use during that time. The other thing, I guess, we are still allowing, by doing that, we're allowing watering of gardening or green assets. And is there any ability, and I know it's not in the drought management plan, but is there any ability for us to be flexible with our community members, even if it is just at that level to allow, I guess, a choice between grass and garden beds?
That's a question that's been asked.
I heard the question, I quite frankly don't know the answer. Purely on a legal, technical point of view, this is the plan and that's the restriction. It creates animal, how do we manage it?
Yes, through the chair. That's something we will, you know, as I said, in trying to learn from implementing the plan of, you know, what we might need to change differently. The intent is to reduce demand. It's how hard it would be to enforce saying, yes, we'll let you water half your lawn if you're not watering your garden.
Is it a choice between one or the other when you ask for, you know, assume garden bed unless you get a concession to choose your lawn or something? I know it's extra.
It's a trust thing, and I don't think, we don't have the powers to go on and make sure these people, if they say they're not going to do one, don't do the other. So it's a tricky one, and then we have to manage the PR around the fact that the neighbours say, well, why can they water their lawn and we can't, and then it just snowballs. I'm being honest, it's one that I probably would strongly recommend against not touching, because as soon as you start getting flexible, you might as well throw the pot.
Okay.
So that's just me thinking on the spot here, being practical about it. Any other views?
Well, I think that there's provision that I asked Peter about, you know, obviously then, you know, how we can make sure that we demonstrate our water usage and how we're doing that. There are provisions within, if you've read the level 2 criteria, active playing fields for sports fields, and, you know, winter times our footy season, our rectangular field stuff. You know, there's that to consider, and there's the provision in there to give ourselves the licence to do that. So again, I'm not suggesting, Councillor Dander's not suggesting to one that we can't. As Gerard rightly points out, I think there is an animal that gets created when you start changing these things, but the licensing arrangement around indicating whether you're watering your plants or your lawn is something that I guess, you know, there's going to be some licenses, I know only for our stuff, but maybe, I don't know whether we can think about it.
I think the current water restrictions, new planting, new lawn is permitted to be watered under a licensed arrangement.
It isn't written in, but it is something, you know, we can consider, because I know there are other councils do the same thing, and they say dispensation for 1 week or whatever.
If you choose to establish.
But I guess we need people to apply to us and ask the question.
Yeah, there's an application process, I guess you'd say.
So, as I said, it's not one that's specifically written into ours, but, you know, we need to
I
try.
haven't seen the application form, but I know some of the elderly in the units, it wouldn't allow out at night, had restrictions of shifted an hour earlier or something like that. But it's mainly for the elderly and the people that actually couldn't go out at night.
And we have, do those permissions for people who ask for a slightly different hours if it's like.
Yeah, they still have the same, they don't get any extra allocation of hours, but they just get a better time slot to suit themselves.
So there is a provision here for people to make an application or apply to.
So we certainly do that under zeros, and, you know, the intent is still, if it's an hour of water, well, if you need to move it half an hour or an hour. We do have a process of here's a sign to stick on the fence.
And that's talking about time, so are you saying that somebody could apply for consideration of, I don't want to water my garden, I don't have a garden bed, or I don't want to water my garden, but can I, do this kind of limited hours on grass?
As I say, we hadn't considered that as yet.
No, it's just trying to create.
Take the question on board and see what we can.
Okay.
What we can do.
Thank you. Further question, the community would be watching council's water use like a hawk. I know in the water, in the drought management plan, there is, obviously there's, for the grassed areas, there's, the wording I think is by permission of the local authority for some of the public areas. I personally would like to know where we are, if we're watering lawn, where we're watering that lawn, just so I guess, just so I know what's happening.
I guess you can probably see around town that the Parks and Gardens team had already under level 1 dropped back to watering on some of the parks, because you can see they're not as green as they were. I'm meeting with the local coordinator of our aiming for Thursday to have a discussion on how that might be done.
Yeah.
Because, I guess we want to keep cleaning our public spaces as we can as well.
Yeah.
Just a point to note, yes, they've come with us on the journey way before we even implemented the restrictions, so they have wound back a lot of the watering way back August last year. What we could do, and this is probably of relevance, that we do get a report, and I'm looking at my fellow GM after this conversation, that they just have a table which they can tag and say this is how we're watering which plants, just that we can see it to answer the question if it gets raised.
Yeah.
I think from an information point of view, at a higher level, I have discussed with a few councils. I have engaged Jeff Kavanagh. We're starting on Wednesday. I need somebody dedicated to do this piece of work because, as the mayor said, it does not just involve us. So I need somebody that understands the water business as far as the bulk water supply is concerned. I want this role also has to start looking at scenarios such as capacities in existing dams and weirs that we have access to, which is not governed by Sun Water, plus. So there's a lot of stuff to do. I've even started talking to Peter Manning about the use of the treated effluent, which means amendment of our licenses for possibly parks and other council green infrastructure. So there's all these scenarios playing out in my head every day, which I need somebody to run with. So there's a lot of information that I'm trying to put together, and as soon as I start getting enough information together in the next month or so, I will clearly want to bring it to council to make you aware of what we're looking at for what I've done the day zero scenario, which we don't know when it is. It could be 2 years away. But so I'm doing a bit of work back in the background with Jeff Kavanagh as my man to pull all this information together and be a holistic view of the what-if scenario, and yes, we very much still as such a small user of the dam, we're still in the hands of some water at the end of the day. And that has also been lined up for conversation. So as soon as all that information comes down, we'll keep on feeding it through. But as it stands monthly, we'll start bringing you monthly reports and we can just build on it.
Just a couple more things. With our communication, can we also just let people know how they can use grey water? And also just maybe a bit of an information around, or where they find information about rainwater tanks as well.
Yeah, people have been asking Peter about the process from a local government perspective about how they go about water in a residential area. Do we have any conditions about that?
I will need to get.
Well, I thought that's because people are considering those options.
I think bores are still a DNR and
Yeah, well, they are. I understand that bit, but is there any requirements from local government?
I'll have
It's
to,
probably
I'll have
is
to,
it a planning?
yes, I'll have to go, I'll talk to our planning colleagues and see.
Well, sort of that sort of information could be out there as well.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Councillor McIntyre, just so going on from that discussion before, I mean, I think you're getting it right, are we at the right levels? Did you want to add to that?
No, the reports, that's on the table here, I spoke to the concern that I had with this report. I don't, it's just a report and I just.
Can I just comment that this is actually all on the website?
Yeah.
But come on, at the end of the day, giving one snapshot is much more efficient than sitting everybody and relying on everybody reading information.
And not everyone accesses in the community the website.
No, Councillor, I'll take that, but again, why do we bring information to Council? It's just nice to give you something that.
Well, did you say why do you bring information to council?
Why do we bring information? Give you something.
No, well, it raises these communication
Maybe that's
points
what I was
and stuff that need to take forward. So, and there's other things, I mean, that are, it's not a bad pun, but I mean, it is quite fluid. People are asking about their options. Now, people understand it, see the water shortage, and, they were told this morning this is the driest summer on record ever here, and certainly since 1889 in Springshaw. So people get that it's dry, notwithstanding that, I mean, we have these things because that's what drives economies, when you have big reservoirs and rivers, but when they're low, the same old principles apply. We've got to, be obviously very conscious of where we fit and what we need to do, so. All right.
Can I just, Mr. Mayor, sorry, just some feedback from customer service, which I've just received from the manager now. We are receiving lots of complaints in regards to illegal watering. So perhaps that messaging that's going out also needs to target that as well.
That there will be penalties for illegal water.
That was the purpose of this report in a public forum, is that goes on file, that we are going to start enforcement regime in the next level up, level 3. So it should be public news now after today. But that's really the intent, but yes, we still have the proviso. There will be education in the form of warnings before we come down the line.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can also add, there's already some work that's currently underway with the comms team in partnership with the water team to prepare that information on the use of grey water, so that should be coming very shortly. And if I can provide some further information around our regulatory services for what water might look like, in the sense that we have the same due diligence process as all of our other regulatory services, that there will be a requirement on us to have the evidence to support that. It's not, as you suggested, or the question, Councillor McIntyre, that it's not guilty until proven innocent.
So I think we'll also need messaging for customer service officers to be very clear and very specific.
And for us as well.
Yeah. Certainly. You shared exactly what customer service.
Yeah, thank you.
Just one other question. You've got the groundwater schemes there, Springshaw and Jinfields, but I noticed you've got the monitoring of groundwater levels at Springshaw and Rolleston have commenced. Is that right? Are you monitoring bore levels in Rolleston?
We have just done our first line of baseline.
Yeah. Well, it would be great to know that those bores are what the status of the bores are, should the ring tank get to a level where,
So
where that's a problem.
Again, that's why we've started that as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good work, yeah. And, the other suggestion I have is I know that I only really know of one facility that is council owned where we are using bore water, and I just want to make sure that we've got basic things like bore water and use signs up if those facilities are being supported by bores, council facilities. I move that we receive the report.
Okay, Councillor Nixon has moved to receive the report, seconded by Councillor Daniels. So that's the infrastructure and utilities update, so that we follow the activities of London. Can we move to second, all in favour? Yes, thank you. Right, councillors, before we go into closed session, I would like to do the late agenda items. Certainly, the one in relation to the new amenities building budget, which is a communities one. So Councillor McIntyre has declared his interest in this, and he would leave the room for this discussion. Thanks, Peter Manning. Yep.
No, that's a nice
All right, councillors, Daniel, I think you're leading us off in this one.
I will, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Councillors, you'll see the report here. Finally, we're hoping to present an opportunity where it would require $5,000 of funding from council, preferably to be provided to the Central Highlands Rugby League Club to cover the costs of potentially fireworks at the event, which is the CQ Intrust, the Super Cup game. So coinciding with the opening of our new facility down there and that event on the day, this has been suggested as a way to complement that opening. There is some funding available within the mayor's budget, which we can allocate for that, as it suggests in the report. It really is an opportunity to try and enhance that opening of the facility and that event itself. But we haven't budgeted for this, and it hasn't been something that we've done in the past. So bringing it to you for your consideration.
How are we, sorry, through the chair, like, I obviously know, I guess we must have these applications or requests all the time.
We do.
And how are we dealing with them? Like, have we just been declining them, or are you usually just?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a variety of ways to deal with them depending on what they are. If there is certain budget for that request, that can be somewhat manoeuvred, but anything similar to this, for example, there'll be a request coming to council soon for an event at the Blackdown area, which is not budgeted for, but which will be seeking some external, some extra funding, I should say, from council to be allocated to that event. But where we can, and where it's operationally appropriate, we can sometimes support the requests that come forward. In this instance, it would be something quite unique, and that I believe council should provide the approval for such. The only other time we do this is at New Year's Eve. So
I understood that once we work through the festivals and events strategy, that we would, and I think this budget would be a good opportunity to address that, but have in place like similar to a grants process, but just have an allocation of funds set aside specifically for these types of requests, and have the guidelines that complement the strategy and those things that we are trying to achieve and support in our communities.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have been remiss in suggesting that there will be a proposal for the upcoming budget for some allocation of this money, yes, but currently we don't have any in our budget to facilitate this request.
Sorry?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Is there a fire risk? Seriously, with the conditions we're experiencing now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't done a full risk assessment for this particular event. The fireworks is one suggestion, but in terms of being able to support that event more broadly, it could be used for alternative options to liven up the event.
Laser lights, laser potential tickets. Take those.
Mayor, just on the fireworks.
Sorry, Councillor Rolfe, yeah.
That was actually, the fireworks, the risk to having fireworks at the end of May has been one for our show society as well, so we're doing a risk assessment on that, just to put it out there.
I actually think fireworks are a waste of money, actually.
So councillors, I mean, we don't really have the funds for this just right now. It's not identified anyway, so.
No, they could have put an application, they could have met the criteria.
It is significant, I guess it's a significant regional event, obviously, in terms of the hierarchy, but it's really up to council. I mean, I was just looking for the part where I apparently had a mayor's budget, and I just couldn't find those words anywhere in here.
Might have been a little bit loose with mine.
Well, I was just
Mention
keen
to your budget.
I'm quite keen to find it, that's all, I've never had one.
Yeah, it's sponsorships and donations budget, I should.
Yes, yeah.
Talk to the.
Plus, $5,000 for fireworks is a bit over the top. Because we only get funding for 3 for the show, and that's more than enough.
I'm quite happy.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the figure is relatively arbitrary. There has been no quote at this stage. It's just to provide that extra support for the event.
I just thought the wording was a bit off there.
So councillors, what do you want to do with it? Because I mean, I don't want us to actually necessarily vote on this. Is there some way we can talk around what you've got a resolution here? I'm not sure that might have been the right way of doing it, but anyhow, I'd rather we look at perhaps, the fireworks is a very awkward fit at the moment. I agree with what the General Acting Manager of Corporate Services said. I mean, that's probably, there are people cancelling their fireworks at shows for that very reason. Maybe we look at some alternative support for the event and discuss how we might do that.
Look, and it is a good opportunity to celebrate the opening of that new amenities building. It is a significant investment on our part, so, I think, and that game is a wonderful opportunity to promote council and that community building. So I'd like to see us supported in an appropriate way. I mean, I'm not against fireworks, but yeah,
no cake instead. No presents and cake.
Can we take out fireworks and put it as a celebration of the opening?
Yeah. Okay, if you want to do that, I'm happy to do that.
It may end up fireworks, but as a celebration of it.
Look, and I'm not, like, I'd like to know what it is that we're supporting. Any other community group, organisation or whatever has to justify funding, needs to put an application in, they've got to be an incorporated group, they've got to have a whole heap of other credentials. So it's that easy just to come and get $5,000 from council, they wouldn't go through our grants process. So, and we need to, understand how, who's going look after the money and equip the money, and we pay direct, or,
So when is the next round of funding? Is that going to happen before?
No, it's August.
We've just assessed the round, Mr Mayor, so it'll come to our next council meeting.
And they need to put a proper application in if they were going through that, correct?
Can we maybe put it back that,
Can we see it as an application?
no, I was going to say, no, you can't do it outside of the rounds, but to allow general manager communities to, I don't know, where I'm going is that there's some sort of event or not event. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so tired. Something to acknowledge the opening of this facility, but I don't know whether it's fireworks, it could be a big cake. I don't know.
Well, that's what we're saying, to celebrate.
But just don't put a dollar amount, just leave it.
$5,000 is a lot of money.
Put it back to Daniel.
Leaves it open to every, big event that comes to town is going to ask us for that amount of money.
I'm just saying, put it back into Daniel's hands to appropriately decide on something that will recognise the significance of the opening of this building. And then you can find, if you have money in the budget, you decide what you have.
Well, I don't know that you want that discretion.
No.
I don't think that's
Mr Mayor, that sort of delegated authority if it goes to mayor or CEO, so you go on that, on Daniel's head.
Can we just put 3,000 in there and forget about it? Just everyone, we don't want fireworks, we don't want 5,000, so, but sponsorship for the opening on. Got to do something. We're going to pay for an opening anyway, aren't we?
Yeah, it is quite a regional and significant event, given the fact that we are opening a $1 million complex, and we will be obviously hosting a lot of people from outside the region for the particular day itself, so it will be a large event. Those two combining factors probably lend itself to us providing some type of support for an opening anyway, but this will give, I guess, a lot more impetus for that event to have a be on a lot bigger scale.
Well, if we're doing the opening, I think there's probably.
Well, there's no process to give people money, so it's either you decide on an amount of money and then say that's what you're prepared to do, or just don't do it. But resolve it if you're going to do something like that.
So what budget do you take it out of?
Well, at this stage, we're suggesting we take it out of the sponsorships and donations.
But what is that budget? Isn't that our grants money?
No.
Oh, right. So we've got another bucket of money.
Yeah, we've got sponsorship.
No.
No, there is.
Well, I've got a few things coming up myself.
Exactly. But actually, I've got one that came in today. I got an email before to see if we would sponsor the bus to Buckland again like we did last year. From Springshire Road.
This is great today.
I think through the mayor, the only real distinction between all of the other requests that we get from community groups is this is a council-owned facility that we have spent a lot of money on developing. So incidentally, there isn't a major event connected to its opening, but that is really the difference between what the regular community requests we get in.
So you're paying yourself to have something flash at your facility?
Yeah, they do it all the time.
I think the benefit here is quite a big event, and it's an opportunity to showcase some of the work that council's doing in the broader community and get that recognition. We would normally, like we do with any opening, we always allocate some budget to having some sort of an event or, and I guess, we should be proud of the work that we do in the community, and I think it's a good opportunity with such a big audience to have a platform where, I'm sure the mayor would be able to say a few words on the night and, give people the context and how the building came around, etc. And so it's a promotional opportunity as well, as much as it is a celebration of
that will happen outside this.
It could, but you'd probably get a bigger audience.
For some further context, through you, Mr Mayor, there will be invites to ministers to be attending that based on receiving funding for that particular facility to be open to them. Will be quite a delegation.
I'd like to know exactly what it's going to be spent on.
Yeah, look, I'm comfortable with supporting the event. I just need to know what it is we're going to support. I'm not against fireworks. Just like to know we've got a budget for it. Let's do something. It's a good opportunity.
If council are willing to provide a certain level of funding, I can work with that to bring back to the council what that looks like. If 5,000 is too much, we can reduce it.
I'd probably be happy with around that 3 or cancel.
Yeah, round 3, I'll be at round 3, and I'd like to know what's actually been spent on.
Yeah.
Going to lollipops, or is it going to cake, or what? I think you've got to have some justification. Yeah.
I'll leave 3, let's get on with it.
Yeah. I'll second.
Yeah, I think it might go up more than that.
Yeah, but what are you going to do to that? They're already there. I know. You're not provide a minister.
That official opening would have happened anyway without us allocating funds, wouldn't it? Yes.
On a very small scale.
What did we do? What did you do?
Later.
No? We had a whole big day there, so.
What did you, what sort of stuff?
Giveaways, we were spending.
Is that something that people are supporting? That resolution. Central Island Music Council agreed to fund $3,000 towards the opening of Macadam Park new amenities Central Island Rugby League Intrust Super Cup on Saturday the 13th of April.
Yes, I'm happy I had moved.
Right, it's been moved by councillor Seifman, seconded. Councillor Godwin Smith. All in favour? Against? Right. Can we grab councillor McIndoe,
No, he's not.
please?
No, he's down smoking.
No, you can just, so yes.
All right, councillors, we've got some closed session items we'll deal with, so we're talking.
Do you want to do general business?
General business?
We've got the later agenda. Standing committee.
Oh, sorry, in the minutes, yeah. My apologies. Right, we'll actually wait till, oh, here it is, thanks, Maggie. All right, councillors, as is normally the case, this late agenda item is actually in fact the minutes of the Finance and Infrastructure Standing Committee, the Community Standing Committee, and the Leadership and Government Standing Committee from this morning. So someone move that, please. Moved by Councillor Grimble, second by Councillor Nixon. These were taken straight, I guess you'd say, straight from those meetings, Marnie, and brought to you. So councillors, you just want to have a quick breeze through those?
They do go back to the significant standing committees.
So they'll have another review by the time they see the light of day. So they'll be moved and seconded, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Right. General business.
Yes,
Yes.
first of all, I'd like to acknowledge International Women's Day, which was last week. I attended the Blackwater, Capella and Emerald events at the libraries, and I believe Gail Godwin Smith attended Gulfstreet. Just want to say that I thought going around the regions was really good. It gave probably not as many that came to the big events we used to hold in Emerald, but it gave the smaller communities a chance to celebrate. So I thought that it was excellent, and I just wanted to congratulate the libraries for running that event.
Can I just, are you finished with that? Can I add a bit to that?
Yes, you may.
Spring Shore time of 3 o'clock in the afternoon was a disaster. When people pick up children from school.
Capella was around the same time, and it was very poorly attended at Capella, but I don't believe that there probably would have been any more. Because it'd been a different time.
I mean, it wasn't a disaster, but it could have been.
I think you had about 20 people.
Yeah, but it could have been
a lot better.
A lot better.
Yeah, Emerald had less, but Emerald had only about 18, Capella had about 12. Blackwater was exceptional. Theirs was a fantastic, about 50 people attended that one. So it was really excellent. But they had things to do. They had the WOW group on that one. That was excellent. The other one I want to raise is the ongoing saga of the street numbering in our communities, and Capella is the one I always go on about. That has been raised probably about 5 years ago, I believe. Well, I know there was an audit done. I think they've done Bluff, Comet, Capella. It got to the stage where Capella identified residents that had wrong addressing. Those people have been notified that they had to change their addressing. I believe that the person who was running that project no longer works here. I'm not sure whether anyone else has been employed to run the project. But this, I can't emphasise enough the importance of having numbers displayed on houses. And Capella hasn't got any, well, very few, if any, numbering on houses. Now this keeps coming through our disaster management committee. It's been pushed by the fireys, it's been pushed by the ambulance, and we would like a report on an update report on where this project is at. Raised again in our meeting the other day. We need a whole of region policy of where street numbering will be displayed. Capella doesn't have, well, I must say, you're starting to put a few more curb gutterings in, but no one has a letterbox because we don't have mail delivery. Not everyone has a fence, so you can't put it on the fence, you can't put it on a letterbox. Where do we display street numbering so that as soon as an ambulance, they know exactly where to go? It's not easy to determine that, but years ago, we started writing a policy about it. Now, that's probably lost in the system somewhere as well, but can we please get back onto this project? This is life and death, and no one seems to take it seriously.
We'll chase that up.
Mayor, gets raised in Dingo every year.
Every community.
There's Bluff's been done once, so that some streets are all, there's the railway houses are all numbered consecutively.
Well, the services are still,
Same old story.
story.
Sounds like more to
So,
say.
can we please make it a priority? Please,
Right, Lana, you can do that.
thank you. Leader.
I just had to bring up, as I said before, on the 4th of May is the Buckland RFDS Day, and a request has come through from Sue McDonald, who organises it, to see if council would sponsor a bus as they did last year. So do you want her to write a letter in?
Yes, please, if you want, and I'm sure councillors, I think we're happy to sponsor that, we always have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
Beautiful.
You can fund it in your little discretionary.
Oh, I'm thinking, that's what I'm thinking.
Mayor's budget.
Absolutely, Mayor's helicopter budget. We'll go. Any other general business, councillors? We need to get on this closed session and try and get home before we start.
Get home before it's dark.
Too late. No, councillors. Right, councillors, closed session. Moved by councillor Syke, second by councillor. Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Councillor Syke.
Councillor Syke and councillor Grimmer moved and seconded, all in favour? Thank you, Joram, thank you, Sandra. Just while we're waiting, yeah, we're not waiting. All right, councillors, the first item there is in relation to the budget consideration for the piano replacement. Someone happy to move that? Moved by councillor McIntyre, second Councillor Daniels. All in favour? Yes. Thank you. Carried unanimously. And the second one is in relation to the Capricorn Highway flood immunity study. There's a resolution there. Someone happy to move that? Moved by councillor Nixon, second councillor Daniels. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Councillors, I think that's about it. I just think, sorry.
No, we've done that.
No, we've done that. We did that one before.
Sorry.
Councillors, just in relation, I think it would be remiss of us if we did acknowledge tomorrow there's a funeral in Springfield for former Ralston resident Jim Parker from Katrina at Ralston, who obviously was a major contributor to his community. And certainly will be missed in his in that region. Does anyone know what time the arrangement for that funeral tomorrow?
11 o'clock in the Anglican Church.
Okay, St. Peter's.
Yes.
So I think councillors will be there, some of us will be there. All right, councillors, if there be no further business, we'll declare the meeting closed at 6:02 p.m. Thank you, everyone. It's not Friday yet. Once upon a time,